The front door of the Caldwell mansion stood like a barrier between two worlds. On one side, warmth and security. On the other, a cold February wind that cut through the evening air like a blade. Henry Caldwell stood in the marble foyer, his hand resting on the brass doorknob, gathering courage for what waited on the other side. 6 months of letters had led to this moment. 6 months of careful words exchanged with Rebecca Sullivan, a woman from Ohio who had answered his advertisement seeking a wife. At 42 years old, Henry had built an empire in commercial real estate, accumulated more wealth than 3 generations could spend, and lived in a house with 12 bedrooms. Yet every night he ate dinner alone at a table that could seat 20. The correspondence had been honest, at least on his part. He told Rebecca about his work, his routine, his desire for companionship. She wrote about her life as a caregiver, her love of cooking, her hope for a fresh start. Neither pretended this was a fairy tale. This was a practical arrangement between two lonely people seeking something better. Henry checked his watch. 7 o'clock exactly. She would be here any moment. Mrs. Patterson, his housekeeper of 15 years, stood nearby with her arms crossed over her substantial frame. Her gray hair was pulled back in its usual tight bun, and her expression showed clear disapproval of this entire situation. "Mr. Caldwell, it's not too late to reconsider this foolishness," she said for the 3rd time that day. "You don't know this woman. She could be after your money. She could be anyone." "We've been through this, Eleanor," Henry replied, using her first name to soften his words. "I'm not a young man anymore. I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for companionship, someone to share this house with, someone to build a life with. You could find that without buying a wife through the mail like she's a catalog item." Before Henry could respond, headlights swept across the front windows. A taxi pulled up the circular driveway, its tires crunching on the gravel. Henry's heart began to pound. This was it. The moment that would change everything. He opened the door and stepped out onto the front porch. The February air hit him immediately, cold enough to make his breath visible. The taxi driver was already out of the car, opening the back door. What happened next would replay in Henry's mind for the rest of his life. A woman emerged from the taxi, and even in the dim porch light, Henry could see she was beautiful. Rebecca Sullivan was a tall African-American woman, perhaps 35 years old, with warm brown eyes and hair pulled back from her face. She wore a simple blue coat that looked too thin for the weather. But it wasn't Rebecca that made Henry's breath catch. It was the elderly woman she was helping out of the car. The older woman moved slowly, painfully. She couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall, her body bent with age and illness. She wore a faded red cardigan over a simple dress, and she leaned heavily on Rebecca's arm. Behind them, the taxi driver pulled out a portable oxygen tank and 2 battered suitcases. Rebecca's eyes met Henry's across the distance, and in that moment he saw everything. Fear, shame, desperate hope, resignation to rejection. "Mr. Caldwell," Rebecca called out, her voice steady despite the terror he could see in her face. "I'm Rebecca Sullivan. This is my mother, Dorothy." Henry stood frozen on the porch. This wasn't what they had discussed. This wasn't part of the arrangement. He had agreed to take a wife, not a wife and her elderly, clearly ill mother. Mrs. Patterson appeared at his elbow. "Mr. Caldwell," she whispered urgently, "you cannot possibly be considering this. Send them away. Send them back to Ohio tonight." The taxi driver set down the oxygen tank and suitcases, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding before him. Dorothy coughed, a wet, rattling sound that echoed in the cold night. Rebecca held her mother steady, her jaw set, prepared for the rejection she expected. Henry looked at the 2 women standing in his driveway. Rebecca, tall and proud despite her fear, supporting her mother with strong arms. Dorothy, small and frail, trying to stand straight despite the pain it clearly caused her. The oxygen tank. The worn suitcases held together with rope. Rebecca's too thin coat. Dorothy's labored breathing in the cold air. He thought about the letters Rebecca had written. She'd told him about her work as a caregiver, but she'd never mentioned she was caring for her own mother. She'd written about wanting a fresh start, but she'd never explained why she needed one so desperately. She'd been honest about not having much to offer except hard work and loyalty, but now he understood what she'd been leaving unsaid. She had nowhere else to go. Her mother had nowhere else to go. Mrs. Patterson tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Caldwell, be reasonable. This is not what you agreed to. Send them away before this situation becomes more complicated." Henry heard her words, but he was watching Dorothy try to smile at him despite her obvious discomfort. He was watching Rebecca blink back tears while trying to maintain her dignity. He was watching two people who had traveled hundreds of miles on what must have been their last bit of money, hoping for mercy from a stranger. The wind picked up and Dorothy shivered violently. The cough came again, worse this time. Henry moved. He walked down the porch steps, past Mrs. Patterson's protests, across the driveway to where Rebecca stood with her mother. "How long has she been on oxygen?" he asked quietly. Rebecca's voice shook when she answered. 3 months. She has congestive heart failure. And pneumonia right now. The hospital in Ohio discharged her because we couldn't pay for more treatment. What medications is she on? Just the basics. We've been rationing what we can afford. Henry looked down at Dorothy, who was watching him with clouded but intelligent eyes. Despite her illness, despite the cold, despite the fear of rejection, there was dignity in the way she held herself. "Mrs. Sullivan," Henry said gently to the older woman, "it's too cold out here for you. Let's get you inside where it's warm." Rebecca's intake of breath was sharp. "Mr. Caldwell, I need to explain. I should have told you in the letters, I know that, but I was afraid you wouldn't agree to meet me if you knew about my mother. She has nobody else. I'm her only child. I couldn't leave her in Ohio, couldn't put her in a state facility where she'd die alone. I thought maybe, after you met me, after some time, I could explain and you might understand. I never meant to deceive you." Henry held up his hand to stop her words. "How long has she been sick?" 2 years. I lost my job because I had to care for her full time. We lost our apartment. We've been staying in a shelter for the past 4 months. I answered your advertisement because I was out of options. I'm not a gold digger, Mr. Caldwell. I'm just a daughter trying to keep her mother alive." The taxi driver cleared his throat. "Excuse me, but I need to get paid and get back to the city. It's going to start snowing soon." Henry pulled out his wallet and handed the man twice the fare. Then he turned to Mrs. Patterson, who had followed him down the steps. "Eleanor, please call Dr. Morrison. Tell him I need him here tonight, not tomorrow. Tell him it's urgent." Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened. "Mr. Caldwell, you cannot be serious." "I'm completely serious. Call him now. Then prepare the blue room on the first floor for Mrs. Dorothy Sullivan. Make sure the heat is turned up and there are extra blankets. Move the armchair closer to the window where she can see the garden." "But sir?" "Please, Eleanor." Henry's voice was firm but kind. "I need you to trust me on this." Mrs. Patterson looked at Rebecca and Dorothy, then back at Henry. Something in his expression must have convinced her because she nodded stiffly and hurried back into the house. Henry turned to Rebecca. "My home has room for both of you." The words hung in the cold air between them. Rebecca stared at him, tears now flowing freely down her face. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I'll understand if you want us to leave. I'll find a way to get back to Ohio. I'll figure something out." "Figure what out?" Henry asked gently. "You said yourself you have nowhere to go. Your mother needs medical care she's not getting. You need a safe place to live. I have 12 bedrooms in this house and eat dinner alone every night. I think we can work something out." Dorothy spoke for the first time, her voice weak but clear. "Young man, why would you help strangers?" Henry met her eyes. "Because someone should. Because it's the right thing to do. Because my house is too big and too quiet, and maybe you two are the answer to prayers I didn't know how to say." He bent down slightly, offering Dorothy his arm. "Now, Mrs. Sullivan, let's get you out of this cold before your daughter worries herself sick." Dorothy took his arm with a trembling hand. Rebecca grabbed the oxygen tank with one hand and supported her mother with the other. Together, the three of them walked toward the mansion's front door. The warmth of the house enveloped them as they stepped inside. The marble foyer gleamed under the crystal chandelier. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor. Oil paintings and gilt frames lined the walls. It was elegant, expensive, and completely intimidating. Rebecca stopped just inside the door, taking in the surroundings. "Mr. Caldwell, I don't think you understand what you're offering. My mother needs constant care. She can't climb stairs. She needs help bathing, dressing, eating. She wakes up coughing in the night. This isn't what you signed up for." Henry closed the door against the cold. "You're right, it's not what I signed up for. It's better. I signed up for someone to share my home with. Now I get 2 people. I signed up for someone to fill these empty rooms. You're already doing that. I signed up for a fresh start and so did you. Let's start fresh together." Mrs. Patterson appeared from the hallway. Her expression was still disapproving, but her voice was professional. "The blue room is ready, Mr. Caldwell. I've turned down the bed and started a fire in the fireplace. Dr. Morrison will be here within the hour." "Thank you, Eleanor. This is Rebecca Sullivan and her mother, Dorothy. They'll be staying with us. Rebecca is my intended as we discussed. Dorothy is now part of our household as well. Mrs. Patterson's lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. The blue room is this way, Mrs. Sullivan. Let me help you. She moved to Dorothy's other side, and together, the four of them made their way down the hallway. The blue room was on the first floor, originally designed as a guest suite for Henry's late mother before she passed. It had its own bathroom, a sitting area, and large windows overlooking the garden. They settled Dorothy into the armchair by the window. Rebecca fussed over her mother, adjusting the oxygen line, tucking a blanket around her legs. Dorothy's breathing was labored, and her skin had a grayish tint that worried Henry. When did she last see a doctor? He asked. 3 days ago. At the free clinic. They said there was nothing more they could do without hospitalization, and we couldn't afford that. Henry pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway. He dialed his personal physician. Tom, it's Henry Caldwell. I need you at my house tonight, not as a favor but as an emergency. I have a patient with congestive heart failure and pneumonia who hasn't been getting proper treatment. Yes, I'll pay whatever it takes. Thank you. When he returned to the room, Rebecca was kneeling beside her mother's chair, holding her hand. Dorothy's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Is she asleep? Henry asked softly. Rebecca shook her head. Just resting. The trip exhausted her. Mr. Caldwell, I need you to understand something. My mother might not have much time left. Even with the best medical care, her heart is failing. The doctors in Ohio gave her 6 months at most. That was 4 months ago. Then we'll make the time she has left as comfortable as possible. But why? You don't know us. We're strangers who showed up at your door with problems you didn't ask for. Henry pulled up a chair and sat down across from Rebecca. 6 months ago, my business partner told me I was becoming a bitter old man. He said I had everything except the things that matter. He was right. I have money, success, this house. But I eat dinner alone. I wake up alone. I go to sleep alone. I built an empire, but I have nobody to share it with. He gestured around the room. This house has been empty for too long. Not empty of furniture or expensive things, but empty of life. Empty of laughter. Empty of people who need each other. You and your mother need help. I need purpose. Maybe we can help each other. Rebecca wiped her eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. Let's get your mother settled, get her examined by a doctor, and start fresh tomorrow. We can figure out the details as we go. But the arrangement, the marriage plans, can wait. Right now, let's focus on making sure Dorothy is comfortable and getting the care she needs. Everything else will sort itself out. Dorothy opened her eyes and looked at Henry. Despite her illness, there was strength in her gaze. You're either a fool or a saint, young man. Henry smiled. Probably a little of both, Mrs. Sullivan. Call me Dorothy. If I'm going to be living in your house, we should be on a first-name basis. Only if you both call me Henry. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. Mrs. Patterson's footsteps clicked down the hallway, and moments later, Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway. He was a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and a gentle manner. Henry, what's the emergency? He asked, setting down his medical bag. Tom, this is Dorothy Sullivan. She has congestive heart failure and pneumonia. She hasn't been getting proper treatment. I need you to examine her and tell me what we need to do to make her comfortable. Dr. Morrison's professional demeanor took over. He moved to Dorothy's side, pulling out his stethoscope. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Dr. Morrison. I'm going to examine you now if that's all right. Dorothy nodded weakly. Rebecca stood up, giving the doctor room to work. She moved to where Henry stood by the door, watching anxiously. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered. I can't believe you're doing this for us. Believe it, Henry replied. You're home now. Both of you. The examination took 20 minutes. Dr. Morrison listened to Dorothy's heart and lungs, checked her blood pressure, examined her medication list, and asked detailed questions about her symptoms and treatment history. His expression grew more serious as he worked. Finally, he stood up and motioned for Henry and Rebecca to step into the hallway. She's very sick, he said bluntly. The heart failure is advanced. The pneumonia is making everything worse. She needs to be in a hospital. No. Dorothy's voice was weak but firm from inside the room. No hospitals. I'm tired of hospitals. If I'm going to die, I want to die somewhere that feels like home. Dr. Morrison looked at Henry. She needs round-the-clock monitoring. Oxygen, medications, probably 4 antibiotics. This isn't something you can manage on your own. Then tell me what I need. Nursing care? Medical equipment? Whatever it costs, whatever it takes. Henry, this could be weeks of intensive care. Could be months. Are you sure about this? Henry looked past the doctor to where Dorothy sat in the chair, looking small and frail but dignified. He looked at Rebecca, who was holding herself together through sheer willpower, exhausted and terrified but refusing to break down. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Dr. Morrison sighed. All right. I'll make some calls. I can have a nurse here by morning and get the medical equipment delivered tomorrow. In the meantime, I'll start her on 4 antibiotics tonight. She needs fluids, proper medications, and rest. Whatever you need to do. The doctor went back into the room and began setting up in 4-line. Rebecca watched from the doorway, her hand pressed to her mouth. Henry stood beside her, solid and steady. Mrs. Patterson appeared with fresh linens and blankets. Her earlier disapproval had softened into something that might have been compassion. She bustled around the room, making Dorothy more comfortable, bringing water, adjusting the pillows. It was nearly midnight by the time Dr. Morrison finished. Dorothy was settled in the bed, in place, oxygen flowing steadily. The antibiotics were running. Her breathing seemed a little easier, and some color had returned to her face. She'll sleep now, Dr. Morrison said, packing up his equipment. The nurse will be here at 6 in the morning. Her name is Patricia and she's excellent. I'll check in tomorrow afternoon. Thank you, Tom. Send me the bill for everything. This is going to be expensive, Henry. I don't care. After the doctor left, Henry found Rebecca sitting beside her mother's bed, holding her hand. Dorothy was sleeping peacefully, the most relaxed Henry had seen her since she arrived. You should get some rest too, he said gently. Mrs. Patterson prepared the green room next door for you. It connects to this room through a shared bathroom so you can check on your mother easily. Rebecca looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. I don't understand why you're doing this. Nobody is this kind to strangers. Henry pulled up a chair and sat down. When I was 10 years old, my father lost everything in a bad business deal. We went from living in a nice house to living in our car in 3 months. We had nowhere to go, no family to help us. My mother got sick, just like your mother is sick now, and we couldn't afford treatment. He paused, the memory still painful after all these years. A man named George Patterson found us sleeping in our car outside his factory. He could have called the police. He could have driven away. Instead, he gave my father a job, let us live in an apartment above the factory, and paid for my mother's medical care. He saved our lives. That's why your housekeeper is named Patterson? Henry nodded. Eleanor is George's daughter. When he died, he left me the factory. I turned it into my first successful business. Everything I have today started because one person showed kindness to strangers who had nothing. Rebecca's eyes filled with fresh tears. So you're paying it forward. I'm trying to. George Patterson taught me that wealth without compassion is just greed. He taught me that a house without love is just a building. He taught me that the measure of a man isn't what he accumulates but what he gives away. He stood up and moved toward the door. Get some rest, Rebecca. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps. But for tonight, just know that you and your mother are safe here. You're home. As he reached the door, Rebecca called out to him. Henry? He turned back. Thank you. For everything. For not turning us away. For helping my mother. For being the kind of person who sees 2 strangers in trouble and doesn't look away. Henry smiled. Thank you for giving me the chance to be that person. I think you two might be the best thing that's happened to this house in a very long time. He left the room and walked slowly through the quiet house. Mrs. Patterson was in the kitchen, cleaning up even though it was well past midnight. You're still up, Henry observed. Someone needs to keep an eye on things, she replied, her tone softer than usual. That girl is terrified, you know. And her mother is very sick. I know. What you did tonight, bringing them in like that, it was either very foolish or very kind. You sound like Dorothy. Mrs. Patterson smiled, a rare occurrence. She seems like a wise woman. My father would have liked her. He would have liked what you did tonight too. He would have said you finally remembered what he tried to teach you all those years ago. That wealth means nothing if you don't use it to help people? Exactly that. She dried her hands on a towel and looked at him directly. I was wrong to tell you to send them away. I was protecting you, but I was wrong. You did the right thing. Thank you, Eleanor. That means more than you know. She nodded and headed toward her own quarters. I'll make sure breakfast is ready early tomorrow. I suspect it's going to be a long day. Henry stood alone in his kitchen, the house quiet around him. Just hours ago, he'd been nervous about meeting a woman he'd been corresponding with for 6 months. Now, 2 people were sleeping under his roof, depending on him, trusting him with their lives. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark garden. Snow was starting to fall, just as the taxi driver had predicted. The flakes caught the light from the house and glittered as they fell. For the first time in years, the silence of his house didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. It felt like the quiet before something wonderful begins. He thought about Rebecca's eyes when he told her his home had room for both of them. He thought about Dorothy's question about why he would help strangers. He thought about George Patterson and the kindness that had saved his family all those years ago. Maybe this was his chance to create that same kind of miracle for someone else. Maybe this was his chance to turn his big empty house into a real home. Maybe this was his chance to prove that kindness still existed in the world. As Henry climbed the stairs to his own bedroom, he realized something important. He'd invited Rebecca to his home looking for companionship, for someone to fill the empty spaces in his life. But in the few hours since she and Dorothy had arrived, he'd found something more valuable. He'd found purpose. He'd found meaning. He'd found the beginning of something that might actually matter. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Dorothy's health would require constant attention. Rebecca would need time to adjust to her new circumstances. There would be practical matters to sort out, legal issues to address, and 1,000 details to manage. But tonight, two people who had been cold and afraid and desperate were warm and safe and sleeping peacefully in rooms down the hall from his own. Tonight, Henry Caldwell's mansion had finally become a home. And as he fell asleep, Henry smiled, knowing that opening his door to two strangers in need was the best decision he'd ever made. Have you ever watched someone choose kindness when they could have chosen comfort? Have you ever seen someone open their door to strangers who needed help? This story is just beginning, and Rebecca and Dorothy's journey with Henry is about to teach all of us something about what really matters in life. If you believe in the power of compassion, if you think the world needs more people like Henry, subscribe now and let me know in the comments what you would have done in his position. Would you have opened your door? Would you have said yes without hesitation? Morning came early to the Caldwell mansion. Henry woke at 5:30 earlier than usual, his mind already racing through everything that needed to happen today. Patricia the nurse would arrive at 6. Dr. Morrison would visit in the afternoon. He needed to arrange for additional medical equipment. He needed to talk to Rebecca about the living arrangements. He needed to make sure Dorothy was comfortable. He showered and dressed quickly, choosing comfortable casual clothes instead of his usual business attire. As he made his way downstairs, he could already smell coffee brewing. Mrs. Patterson was in the kitchen, preparing what looked like enough breakfast for an army. "You're up early," Henry observed. "So are you." She cracked eggs into a bowl with practiced efficiency. "I thought we should have a proper breakfast ready. That girl and her mother need good food. From the look of them, they haven't been eating well." Henry poured himself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen counter, watching Mrs. Patterson work. In the 15 years she'd been his housekeeper, he'd never seen her prepare breakfast with quite this much care. "You've changed your mind about them," he said. "I've reconsidered my initial reaction," she corrected. "That's different from changing my mind completely. I still think you're taking on more than you realize. But after watching that girl sit up all night with her mother, checking her breathing every few minutes, adjusting her blankets, holding her hand even when she was asleep, I realized something." "What's that?" "That kind of love is rare. That girl would do anything for her mother. When you agreed to take them both in, you didn't just give them a place to live. You gave that girl hope that her mother might actually survive. That's worth something." Before Henry could respond, the doorbell rang. He checked his watch. 6 o'clock exactly. Patricia was punctual. The nurse turned out to be a woman in her early 50s with silver hair pulled back in a neat braid and calm, competent eyes. She carried a large medical bag and had the air of someone who had seen everything and couldn't be rattled by anything. "Mr. Caldwell? I'm Patricia Chin. Dr. Morrison sent me to care for Mrs. Sullivan. Thank you for coming so early. Let me show you to her room." They walked quietly down the hallway. The door to the blue room was slightly ajar, and Henry could see Rebecca asleep in a chair beside her mother's bed. She'd pulled the chair close enough to hold Dorothy's hand while she slept. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes. Patricia took in the scene with professional assessment. "Poor thing probably hasn't slept properly in months. You go ahead and wake her gently while I check my patient's vitals." Henry approached Rebecca carefully and touched her shoulder. Her eyes flew open immediately, alert and frightened. "It's all right," he said softly. "The nurse is here. Patricia is going to check on your mother." Rebecca stood up quickly, nearly stumbling. Her face was creased from sleeping in the chair, and her eyes were puffy from crying. "Is she okay? I checked on her every hour. Her breathing seemed better around 3 o'clock. I'm sure she's fine. Why don't you go get cleaned up and have some breakfast? Mrs. Patterson has prepared enough food to feed the entire neighborhood." I should stay with my mother. Patricia looked up from where she was checking Dorothy's blood pressure. Honey, I appreciate your devotion, but you're no good to your mother if you collapse from exhaustion. Go take a hot shower, eat a proper meal, and come back refreshed. I promise I'll take excellent care of her while you're gone. Rebecca hesitated, looking at her mother. I'll stay here until you get back, Henry offered. If anything changes, I'll come get you immediately. Finally, Rebecca nodded. She leaned down and kissed her mother's forehead, then walked slowly toward the connecting bathroom and her own room beyond. Henry settled into the chair Rebecca had vacated while Patricia worked. The nurse was efficient and gentle, checking the 4-line, listening to Dorothy's heart and lungs, adjusting the oxygen flow slightly. How is she? Henry asked quietly. Better than Dr. Morrison described. The 4 antibiotics are helping. Her lungs sound clearer this morning. With proper care and medication, she might have more time than those doctors in Ohio thought. That's good news. Patricia looked at him directly. Dr. Morrison told me a little about the situation. You're taking in a woman and her sick mother even though you just met them yesterday? That's right. Why? Henry was getting tired of that question, but he understood why people kept asking. Because they needed help and I could provide it. Is that so hard to believe? Patricia smiled. In my line of work, I see a lot of human nature. I see families who abandon their sick relatives. I see children who can't be bothered to visit their dying parents. I see people at their worst when dealing with illness and death. So yes, a stranger taking in 2 people he doesn't know and paying for expensive medical care is a little hard to believe. Maybe the world needs more hard-to-believe kindness. Maybe it does. She returned her attention to Dorothy. This woman has been very sick for a long time. Her daughter has been caring for her alone with no resources. That kind of stress breaks people. When Dr. Morrison told me about this case, I almost didn't believe him. But I'm glad I came. This is the kind of work that reminds me why I became a nurse. Dorothy stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She looked confused for a moment, then focused on Henry. You're still here, she said, her voice hoarse. I thought maybe I dreamed last night. It wasn't a dream. You're in my home and this is Patricia. She's going to be your nurse. Dorothy turned her head to look at Patricia. I don't need a nurse. Yes, you do, Patricia replied firmly but kindly. You have congestive heart failure and pneumonia. You need monitoring, medication, and proper care. Now let's not argue about it. I'm here, I'm being paid very well, and I'm going to make sure you get better. I can't afford a nurse. Good thing I'm not asking you to pay then, Henry said. Patricia works for me now. Her job is to take care of you. Dorothy tried to sit up, and Patricia helped her adjust the pillows behind her back. Young man, I don't understand you at all. You don't have to understand. You just have to get better. Where's Rebecca? Taking a shower and getting breakfast. She sat up with you all night. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. She's been taking care of me for 2 years. She gave up everything for me. Her job, her apartment, her savings, her whole life. All because I got sick. She loves you. That's what people do when they love someone. But it's not fair to her. She should be building her own life, finding her own happiness. Instead, she's stuck caring for a dying old woman. Patricia finished adjusting the 4 and sat down on the edge of the bed. Mrs. Sullivan, I've been a nurse for 30 years. I've seen a lot of family dynamics. Your daughter doesn't see caring for you as being stuck. She sees it as privilege. The way she looks at you, the way she touches your hand, the way she checks your breathing even in her sleep, that's not obligation. That's love. But she answered that advertisement because of me. She's marrying a stranger because I need medical care we can't afford. Henry leaned forward. Dorothy, can I be honest with you? I'd appreciate that. I placed that advertisement because I was lonely. Because I have everything money can buy and nothing that actually matters. Because I eat dinner alone every night in a house big enough for 20 people. I wasn't looking for a fairy tale romance. I was looking for companionship, someone to share my life with. He gestured around the room. Your daughter showing up with you, that wasn't a complication. That was a blessing. This house needs life in it. It needs people who care about each other. It needs purpose. You two have given me that in one night. You're a strange man, Henry Caldwell. So I've been told. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her hair still damp from the shower. She'd changed into clean clothes, a simple green sweater and jeans that looked worn but neat. Without makeup, with her hair pulled back, she looked younger and more vulnerable than she had last night. How is she? Rebecca asked immediately. Better, Patricia replied. The antibiotics are working. Her lungs are clearer. With rest and proper medication, I think she'll improve significantly. Rebecca's face crumpled with relief. She crossed the room quickly and knelt beside her mother's bed. Mama, I was so scared. You were so sick yesterday and I thought. I'm not going anywhere yet, baby girl. Apparently, I have a stubborn nurse and a generous stranger who won't let me. Patricia stood up. I'm going to give you all a few minutes together. Mr. Caldwell, can you show me where I can set up my station? I'll need a place to keep supplies and medications. Henry led Patricia out of the room and down the hallway to a small sitting room adjacent to the blue room. Will this work? Patricia looked around. This is perfect. I can keep my supplies here and still be close enough to hear if Mrs. Sullivan needs anything. Dr. Morrison said he's having more equipment delivered today. Yes. A hospital bed, monitors, whatever you think she needs. That's good. She'll be more comfortable in a proper hospital bed. And Mr. Caldwell? About Rebecca. What about her? That girl is running on empty. She's been her mother's sole caregiver for 2 years with no help, no breaks, no support. She's exhausted physically and emotionally. She needs rest, proper food, and probably some therapy if she'd be willing to talk to someone. I'll make sure she has whatever she needs. I know you will. I can already tell you're the kind of person who follows through on his promises. Patricia smiled. Dr. Morrison told me you were one of his most stubborn patients. Now I see where that stubbornness comes from. You don't give up on things that matter to you. Dorothy and Rebecca matter. After one night? Henry considered the question. Sometimes you just know. Sometimes you meet someone and you can see exactly who they are in a single moment. Last night, when I saw Rebecca supporting her mother, refusing to abandon her even though it cost her everything, I knew exactly who she was. She's strong, loyal, and kind. The world needs more people like that. And her mother? Is exactly the kind of person who raises a daughter like Rebecca. They're a package deal and I'm grateful for both of them. Patricia nodded approvingly. You're going to do just fine, Mr. Caldwell. Now let me get to work. Mrs. Sullivan needs her morning medications. Henry left Patricia to organize her supplies and made his way to the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson had outdone herself. The counter was covered with scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, toast, fresh fruit, yogurt, and what looked like homemade cinnamon rolls. Eleanor, this is incredible. That girl needs fattening up. And her mother needs good nutrition to fight the infection. I figured a proper breakfast was the least I could do. Rebecca appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking uncertain. Mrs. Patterson, you didn't have to go to all this trouble. It's no trouble. Sit down and eat. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in weeks. Rebecca sat at the kitchen counter, and Mrs. Patterson immediately placed a full plate in front of her. Eat. All of it. You need your strength. For the next 20 minutes, the kitchen was quiet except for the sounds of eating. Henry watched Rebecca work her way through the food on her plate, noting how she ate quickly, like someone used to not knowing where the next meal was coming from. When she finally set down her fork, there were tears in her eyes again. Mrs. Patterson, that was the best meal I've had in 2 years. Thank you. You're welcome, dear. Now let's talk practically. You and your mother are living here now. We need to establish some routines and expectations. Rebecca looked at Henry. I don't want to be a burden. I can earn my keep. I'm a good cook, I can clean, I can do whatever you need. You're not the help, Henry said firmly. You're my intended wife, remember? This is your home now. But the arrangement, we never discussed your mother being part of the situation. I understand if you want to reconsider. Henry set down his coffee cup. Rebecca, let me be very clear. I don't want to reconsider. I want you and Dorothy here. Yes, the circumstances are different from what we originally discussed, but I don't see that as a problem. Do you want to reconsider? No. But I need to understand what you expect from me. From this arrangement. Right now, I expect you to settle in, rest, and help your mother recover. We can figure out the rest as we go. Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. If I may make a suggestion? Perhaps you two should spend some time getting to know each other properly. You've been writing letters for 6 months, but that's different from actually spending time together. Why don't you show Rebecca the house and grounds this morning while I sit with Dorothy and Patricia? It was a good idea. Henry stood up. Would you like a tour? Rebecca nodded and followed him out of the kitchen. They started on the first floor, where Henry showed her the formal living room, the library, his office, the dining room, and the conservatory that overlooked the garden. This house is beautiful, Rebecca said softly. It's like something from a movie. It's too big for one person. I bought it thinking I'd fill it with family someday, but that day never came. Now maybe it will. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, where the bedrooms were located. Henry showed her the master suite, the guest rooms, and the room that had been his mother's before she passed away. "You must have been very lonely here," Rebecca observed. I threw myself into work, traveled constantly, did anything to avoid coming home to an empty house. When my business partner suggested I consider finding a wife, I initially laughed at him. But the idea grew on me. I realized I didn't want to spend the rest of my life alone. They moved to the third floor, which had been converted into a recreation area with a home theater, a gym, and a game room that had never been used. "Why did you choose the mail-order bride route?" Rebecca asked. "A man like you could date conventionally. You're successful, kind, attractive. You could have your pick of women." Henry appreciated her directness. "I tried conventional dating. Women were either intimidated by my wealth or too interested in it. I never knew if someone liked me or my bank account. The transactional honesty of the arrangement we made felt refreshing. We both knew what we were getting into." "Were you disappointed when I showed up with my mother?" He turned to face her fully. "I was surprised. But disappointed? No. I saw a woman who loved her mother enough to risk everything for her. I saw courage and loyalty and strength. Those are rare qualities. I should have told you in the letters." "Why didn't you?" Rebecca looked out the window at the garden below. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd say no. Afraid I'd lose my last chance to save my mother. Afraid that honesty would cost me everything. I'm not proud of keeping it from you, but I was desperate. I understand desperation. When my family lost everything, my parents were desperate too. They made hard choices. They accepted help from strangers. They did what they had to do to survive. I don't judge you for that, Rebecca. I admire your determination to protect your mother." She turned from the window, and he could see the exhaustion in her face that went beyond physical tiredness. "I've been so scared for so long. Scared she'd die. Scared we'd end up on the street. Scared I'd fail her. When we were in that taxi last night, driving up to your house, I was praying harder than I've ever prayed in my life. Praying you'd be kind. Praying you'd give us a chance. Your prayers were answered. Why though? You still haven't really explained it. Why would you take in two strangers and pay for expensive medical care and change your whole life for people you don't even know?" Henry walked to the window and stood beside her. "When I was young, a man named George Patterson saved my family. He didn't have to. We were nothing to him. But he saw people in need and he helped. He taught me that the purpose of wealth isn't accumulation. It's not about how much you have. It's about what you do with it." He gestured at the house around them. "I have all of this, but what good is it if I keep it to myself? What's the point of a 12-bedroom house if nobody lives in it? What's the point of wealth if I don't use it to help people? Your mother needs medical care. You need stability and security. I can provide those things without even noticing the cost. It would be wrong not to." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "Most people wouldn't see it that way. Then most people are wrong." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking out at the snow-covered garden. Finally, Rebecca spoke again. "In your letters, you said you wanted companionship and partnership. You said you were looking for someone to share your life with. Does that still stand even with my mother being part of the equation?" "It stands. In fact, I think having Dorothy here makes it better. She's your family, which means she's my family now too. I like the idea of actually having family again. But you barely know us. I'm getting to know you. And so far, I like everything I'm learning." Rebecca smiled for the first time since arriving. It transformed her face, making her look younger and lighter. "You're not what I expected, Henry Caldwell. What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone more formal, maybe. More distant. More interested in the transactional aspect of our arrangement. Instead, you're kind and genuine and you actually seem to care about what happens to us." "I do care. I cared from your first letter. You wrote about wanting a fresh start and building a real partnership. Those words stayed with me. They made me think about what I really wanted from this arrangement too." "And what do you want?" Henry considered the question carefully. "I want what I haven't had in a very long time. A home that feels alive. People to care about. Someone to talk to at the end of the day. Purpose beyond just making money. I want to matter to someone and I want someone to matter to me. That's what I want too. I've spent 2 years focused entirely on keeping my mother alive. I've had no time for myself, no energy for my own life. Part of me answered your advertisement because I needed medical help for her. But part of me answered because I wanted what you just described. I wanted to matter to someone again." They looked at each other, really looked, perhaps for the first time. In the bright morning light, without the drama and stress of the previous night, they could actually see each other clearly. "I think we might be good for each other," Henry said. I think you might be right. A knock on the doorframe interrupted the moment. Mrs. Patterson stood there looking pleased. The medical equipment has arrived. Patricia wants your input on where to set things up, Mr. Caldwell. And Rebecca, your mother is asking for you. They followed Mrs. Patterson downstairs. The hallway outside Dorothy's room was filled with delivery men setting up a hospital bed, monitors, and other medical equipment. Patricia was directing traffic like a general commanding troops. Inside the room, Dorothy was sitting up in the temporary bed, looking more alert than she had the night before. Her color was better and her breathing seemed easier. "Mama, you look better," Rebecca said, rushing to her side. "I feel better. That nurse of yours is a tyrant, but she knows what she's doing. My lungs don't hurt as much when I breathe." Patricia appeared in the doorway. "Flattery will get you nowhere, Mrs. Sullivan. You're still on bed rest for at least a week." "A week? I'll go crazy just lying here. Then we'll find ways to keep you entertained. But you're not getting up except to use the bathroom until those lungs clear completely. Doctor's orders." Henry watched the easy banter between Patricia and Dorothy, pleased that they were already developing a rapport. This was going to work. He could feel it. The rest of the morning was spent setting up Dorothy's room properly. The hospital bed was positioned near the window so she could look out at the garden. The monitors were set up but kept quiet so they wouldn't disturb her. A comfortable chair was placed beside the bed for Rebecca. By lunchtime, the room looked more like a comfortable bedroom than a hospital room despite all the medical equipment. Mrs. Patterson brought soup and sandwiches, and they all ate together in Dorothy's room. "This is nice," Dorothy said, looking around at the group. "I haven't had a family meal in a long time." "We used to have dinner together every night," Rebecca explained to Henry. "Before Mama got sick, we'd cook together and sit at the table and talk about our days. I miss that." "Then we'll make it a tradition here," Henry said. "When Dorothy is feeling better, we'll have dinner together every night. All of us." Mrs. Patterson raised her eyebrows but didn't comment. Patricia smiled approvingly. After lunch, Dr. Morrison arrived to check on Dorothy. He was pleased with her progress and even more pleased with the setup Patricia had created. "This is better than most hospital rooms," he commented. "Mrs. Sullivan, you're in excellent hands." "I'm beginning to realize that," Dorothy replied. "Though I still don't understand why." Dr. Morrison looked at Henry. "Because you have a stubborn, generous man taking care of you. Don't question it. Just accept it and get better." After the doctor left, Henry returned to his office to handle some business matters he'd been neglecting. His assistant was surprised to hear from him. "Mr. Caldwell, I expected you to take the week off," she said over the phone. "Isn't your, arrangement arriving today?" "She arrived last night. And there have been some changes to the situation that I need to brief you on." He spent the next hour explaining the new circumstances to his assistant and to his business partner, James. Both were surprised but supportive. "So you're taking in not just a wife but also her sick mother?" James said. "That's very generous of you, Henry. It's the right thing to do. It's more than that. It's the kind of thing George Patterson would have done. He'd be proud of you." Those words meant more to Henry than James probably realized. The afternoon passed quietly. Henry worked in his office while Rebecca sat with her mother. Patricia monitored Dorothy's vitals and adjusted medications. Mrs. Patterson prepared dinner, humming softly in the kitchen. As evening approached, Henry found himself looking forward to dinner in a way he hadn't in years. Not because the food would be exceptional, though Mrs. Patterson was an excellent cook, but because he wouldn't be eating alone. At 6 o'clock, they gathered in Dorothy's room again. Mrs. Patterson had prepared chicken soup, homemade bread, and a simple salad. They ate from trays, talking quietly about nothing in particular. "This is the best day I've had in a very long time," Dorothy said as they finished eating. "Me too," Rebecca agreed. Henry looked around at the unlikely group assembled in the blue room. A housekeeper who had become like family. A nurse who was already invested in her patient's recovery. A sick woman who was fighting to survive. An exhausted daughter who was finally getting help. And him. A lonely man who had opened his door to strangers and found something he'd been missing for years. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Tomorrow we'll establish better routines. Rebecca, you need to start taking care of yourself too. Real rest, not just sleeping in a chair. Regular meals. Time to decompress." "Patricia, what does Dorothy's recovery schedule look like?" "With proper care and medication, she should show significant improvement in a week. The pneumonia should clear in 10 days to 2 weeks. The heart failure is chronic, but we can manage it with medication and lifestyle changes. She's stronger than she looks." "I'm tougher than old boots," Dorothy confirmed. I'm not ready to die yet. Not when life just got interesting again. After dinner, Rebecca walked with Henry to the front door. She wanted to get something from their luggage that hadn't been unpacked yet. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything today. For the medical care, for being patient with us, for making my mother comfortable. For not making me feel like we're charity cases. You're not charity cases. You're family now. We barely know each other. We're learning. And so far, I like what I'm learning very much. Rebecca smiled that transforming smile again. I like what I'm learning too. You're nothing like I imagined, Henry. You're better. They stood in the foyer, the same spot where Henry had made his decision the night before to welcome them into his home. Less than 24 hours had passed, but it felt like much longer. Get some sleep tonight, Henry said. In a real bed, not a chair. Patricia will monitor your mother. You need rest. I know. I just worry. Of course you do. But you're not alone anymore. We'll all worry together and we'll all help take care of her together. Rebecca impulsively hugged him, a quick, grateful embrace that was over almost before it began. Thank you, Henry. For saving us. Thank you for letting me. As Henry climbed the stairs to his own bedroom that night, he realized how much had changed in such a short time. Yesterday this house had been empty and quiet. Tonight it was full of life and purpose. He fell asleep with a smile on his face, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to build this unlikely family into something real and lasting. The first night under one roof had been a success. The journey was just beginning. The first week in the Caldwell mansion established patterns that would define the months to come. Henry woke early each morning and checked on Dorothy before heading to his office. Rebecca gradually learned to sleep through the night, trusting Patricia to handle any emergencies. Mrs. Patterson's initial skepticism transformed into warm acceptance as she watched the household come alive. 5 days after Rebecca and Dorothy's arrival, Henry came downstairs to find something unexpected in his kitchen. Rebecca stood at the stove, scrambling eggs while bacon sizzled in a pan. She wore a simple blue blouse and jeans and she was humming softly to herself. Good morning, Henry said, surprising her. She turned, spatula in hand. Good morning. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to cook breakfast. Mrs. Patterson has been so wonderful, but I needed to do something useful. I've been feeling like a guest in your home instead of someone who lives here. Henry poured himself coffee and sat at the counter. You are someone who lives here. But I understand the need to contribute. What are you making? Just scrambled eggs and bacon. Nothing fancy. I'm a good cook, though you wouldn't know it from the past 2 years. When you're rationing food and living in shelters, there's not much opportunity for actual cooking. She plated the eggs and bacon, adding toast from the toaster. The portions were generous and everything was cooked perfectly. Henry took a bite and closed his eyes. This is delicious. Rebecca beamed. Really? I used to cook all the time before Mama got sick. I worked as a line cook at a small restaurant in Ohio. Nothing fancy, just good, honest food. I loved it. Why did you leave? The light in her eyes dimmed slightly. Mama's first heart attack was at work. The restaurant owner was understanding at first, but I had to miss too many shifts to take care of her. Eventually he had to let me go. I tried to find other work, but no one wants to hire someone who might have to leave at any moment for family emergencies. That must have been difficult. It was terrifying. Without income, we lost our apartment. We tried staying with friends, but we couldn't burden them forever. The shelter was our last option. She poured orange juice into 2 glasses. The worst part wasn't the physical discomfort. It was the constant fear. Fear that Mama would die because we couldn't afford treatment. Fear that I'd fail her. Fear that we'd never escape the situation we were in. Henry watched her face as she talked, noting the way her hands gripped the juice container a little too tightly, the tension in her shoulders even as she tried to appear relaxed. You don't have to be afraid anymore, he said gently. I know. Logically, I know that. But fear doesn't respond to logic. I still wake up in the middle of the night convinced this is all a dream. That I'll wake up back in the shelter, that Mama will still be dying, that you'll turn out to be some kind of cruel mirage. I'm very real and so is your place here. Mrs. Patterson arrived for her day's work and stopped in surprise at the sight of Rebecca cooking. Well, this is a pleasant change. I hope you don't mind, Rebecca said quickly. I didn't mean to step on your toes. Mind? I'm delighted. A kitchen should have someone cooking in it who enjoys it. I'm an adequate cook, but I've never loved it the way you clearly do. Mrs. Patterson hung up her coat and joined them at the counter. What else can you make? Rebecca's face lit up. Almost anything. Give me ingredients and I can create a meal. I'm particularly good with comfort food. Pot roast, chicken and dumplings, homemade bread, pies. My grandmother taught me to cook when I was young. The same grandmother who raised you? Henry asked, remembering details from her letters. Yes. My father left when I was 2 and my mother struggled with addiction. Grandma Dorothy took us both in. She raised me while trying to help my mother get clean. Rebecca's expression grew sad. My mother died of an overdose when I was 15. After that, it was just me and Mama. Your mother is named after your grandmother? I named her Dorothy in honor of Grandma who passed away when I was 18. Mama Dorothy has been my only family for 17 years now. She's everything to me. Mrs. Patterson reached across the counter and patted Rebecca's hand. She's clearly done a wonderful job raising you. You're a good daughter. I'm trying to be. Patricia appeared in the kitchen doorway. Good morning, everyone. Mrs. Sullivan is asking for breakfast, and she specifically requested whatever Rebecca is cooking because it smells amazing. Rebecca immediately began preparing another plate. How is she this morning? Much improved. Her oxygen levels are better. The pneumonia is responding well to treatment. She's asking when she can get out of bed and walk around. What did you tell her? That if she behaves and continues improving, maybe short walks starting tomorrow. Under strict supervision, of course. Rebecca's relief was visible. She's really getting better? She really is. The difference proper medication and care makes is remarkable. Your mother is a fighter, Rebecca. With continued treatment, she could have years left, not months. The words hung in the air. Rebecca set down the plate she'd been holding, her hands shaking. Years? I can't make promises, but yes. The doctors in Ohio were right that her heart failure is serious, but they were wrong that it's immediately terminal. With management, she can have quality time. Rebecca's knees seemed to give out. Henry was there immediately, helping her into a chair. She put her head in her hands and sobbed, great heaving sobs of relief and release. I thought she was dying, she gasped between sobs. I thought I was going to lose her any day. I've been preparing myself for her death for 2 years. Patricia knelt beside Rebecca's chair. She's not dying right now. She's getting stronger every day. You saved her life by bringing her here. You gave her the chance she needed. Henry rested his hand on Rebecca's shoulder while she cried. Mrs. Patterson quietly finished preparing Dorothy's breakfast tray. Patricia waited patiently, her expression compassionate. Finally, Rebecca's tears slowed. She wiped her face with the napkin Henry offered. I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this. You've been holding yourself together under impossible circumstances for 2 years, Patricia said. You're allowed to fall apart now that you're safe. Rebecca took a shaky breath. Can I bring Mama her breakfast? Of course. She'll be happy to see you. Rebecca carried the tray down the hallway with Patricia following. Henry and Mrs. Patterson remained in the kitchen. That poor girl has been through hell, Mrs. Patterson said quietly. Yes, she has. But she's here now, and we're going to make sure she and Dorothy have the support they need. You care about them already. I can see it. Henry nodded. I do. Is that strange? To care so quickly? Not when you consider what you've seen. That girl's loyalty, her strength, her refusal to abandon her mother despite losing everything. Those are rare qualities. And Dorothy herself is remarkable. Facing death with such grace and humor. They're good people, Henry. They are. Are you still planning to marry her? It was the question Henry had been asking himself. I don't know. The original arrangement was practical, transactional. But now that they're here, now that I know them, it feels different. I don't want a business arrangement. I want something real. Does Rebecca feel the same way? I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it. We've both been focused on Dorothy's health. You should talk about it. Not today, maybe not this week, but soon. You both deserve clarity about what this is and what it might become. Henry spent the morning working in his office but found it hard to concentrate. His mind kept wandering to the kitchen, to Rebecca's cooking, to her tears of relief about her mother's prognosis, to the way she trusted him enough to fall apart in front of him. Around noon he went to check on Dorothy. He found her sitting up in the new hospital bed, looking stronger than he'd yet seen her. Rebecca sat in the chair beside the bed, and they were looking at old photographs together. Henry, Dorothy called out when she saw him. Come look at these. Rebecca brought our photo albums from storage. He crossed the room and looked at the photographs Rebecca held. They showed a younger Rebecca, perhaps in her 20s, laughing at the camera. Beside her was a woman who could only be Dorothy, 20 years younger but clearly the same person. This was at my 30th birthday party, Dorothy explained. Rebecca planned a surprise party with all my friends. She made a 3-layer cake from scratch. It collapsed in the middle, Rebecca added, laughing at the memory. We had to prop it up with wooden skewers and cover the whole thing with extra frosting. It was the best cake I ever tasted because my daughter made it with love. They spent the next hour looking through photographs and listening to stories. Dorothy had been a school teacher for 40 years. Rebecca had been a bright student who loved reading and cooking. There were pictures of holidays, birthdays, graduations. A whole life documented in fading photographs. You two have a beautiful history together, Henry observed. We do, Dorothy agreed. Rebecca has been my whole world since the day she was born. My daughter couldn't have children, so when Rebecca came along, she was a miracle. Even though my daughter struggled, even though life was hard, Rebecca made everything worthwhile. Mama, you're going to make me cry again. Good tears this time, baby. Happy tears. Dorothy looked at Henry. Patricia tells me I'm getting stronger. That I might have years left instead of months. That's wonderful news. It's more than wonderful. It's a miracle. And that miracle has a name, Henry Caldwell. Dorothy's eyes were sharp despite her illness. You gave us this gift. Time together that we thought we'd lost. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You could have turned us away. You could have helped Rebecca but refused to take on a sick old woman. Instead, you welcomed us both. You gave me the best medical care available. You treated us like family from the first moment. Why? Henry sat down in the other chair. Because it was the right thing to do. Because I could help and therefore I should help. Because you too deserved kindness and I was in a position to give it. Dorothy studied his face. My daughter is falling in love with you. Do you know that? Mama, Rebecca protested, her face flushing. Hush, baby. I'm old and sick, which means I get to speak the truth without worrying about social niceties. Dorothy kept her eyes on Henry. She tries to hide it, but I know my daughter. The way she talks about you, the way her face lights up when you come into a room, the way she worries about inconveniencing you. She's falling for you. Henry looked at Rebecca, who was staring at her hands in her lap, her face bright red. And what about you, Henry Caldwell? Dorothy continued. How do you feel about my daughter? It was a fair question and it deserved an honest answer. I care about her very much. I admire her strength, her loyalty, her kindness. I enjoy her company. Every morning I look forward to seeing her. Every evening I hope she'll join me for dinner. She's made this house feel like a home in a way it never has before. But do you love her? Mama, you can't just ask him that, Rebecca said, mortified. I can and I did. We're all adults here. We're living together. You two entered into an arrangement that involved marriage. Don't you think it's time we talked about feelings honestly? Henry appreciated Dorothy's directness. I don't know if what I feel is love. Not yet. But I know it could become love. I know I want to spend time with Rebecca. I know I miss her when she's not around. I know I want to make her happy. Is that love? Maybe not yet. But it's the beginning of something that could be. Dorothy nodded, satisfied. Good. That's an honest answer. Now, Rebecca, your turn. How do you feel about Henry? Rebecca finally looked up, meeting Henry's eyes. I feel safe with him. For the first time in 2 years, I'm not afraid. I sleep at night knowing Mama is being cared for, knowing we have a home, knowing we're not going to wake up on the street. Henry has given us so much more than just a place to live. He's given us hope. That's gratitude, baby. That's important, but it's not the same as love. I know. But there's more than gratitude. When I'm with Henry, I feel seen. Really seen, not just as Mama's caretaker or someone in need of charity, but as myself. He asks about my dreams, my interests, my opinions. He treats me like an equal even though he's wealthy and I came here with nothing. He makes me laugh. He challenges me. He's kind without being condescending. I look forward to our evening walks. I enjoy our conversations. I think about him when he's not around. I don't know if that's love either, but it feels like it could be. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, the honesty hanging in the air between them. Finally, Henry spoke. What if we give ourselves time to find out? No pressure, no expectations, just time to get to know each other and see what develops naturally. I'd like that, Rebecca said softly. Dorothy smiled. Good. That's settled then. Now, Henry, Patricia says I can take short walks starting tomorrow. Will you walk with me in the garden? I'd like to see these grounds you keep talking about. I'd be honored. That evening, after dinner, Henry and Rebecca took their now regular walk in the garden. The snow from earlier in the week had melted, leaving the paths clear and the air crisp but not uncomfortably cold. "I'm sorry about Mama putting you on the spot today," Rebecca said as they walked. "She's very direct." I appreciated it actually. It gave us a chance to address things we've been dancing around. "True." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Did you mean what you said? About giving us time to see what develops?" "Every word." "Rebecca, we entered into this arrangement for practical reasons, but that doesn't mean we can't build something real. I'm not expecting instant love or grand romantic gestures. I'm just hoping we can be honest with each other and see where that honesty leads us." "I can do that." "Honesty is something I owe you after not telling you about Mama in the beginning. You've apologized for that enough. Let's move forward instead of looking back." They reached the rose garden, dormant for the winter but still beautiful in the moonlight. Rebecca stopped and turned to face him. "Henry, I need to tell you something else. Something I've been afraid to say." "You can tell me anything." "I'm scared of being happy." "Does that make sense? For 2 years, every good thing in my life has been temporary. Every moment of peace has been followed by crisis. I'm terrified that this happiness, this safety, is going to be taken away. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." Henry took her hands in his. "I can't promise that bad things will never happen. Life doesn't work that way. But I can promise that I'm not going anywhere. I can promise that you and Dorothy have a permanent home here for as long as you want it. I can promise that whatever comes, we'll face it together." Tears slipped down Rebecca's cheeks, but she was smiling. "How are you so kind? How is anyone this genuinely good?" "I'm not that good. I'm just a man who got lucky enough to have someone teach me what really matters in life. George Patterson showed me that wealth without compassion is meaningless. Now I'm trying to live up to the example he set." "He'd be proud of you." "I hope so." They stood in the garden, hands linked, comfortable in the quiet. After a while, Rebecca spoke again. "Tell me about your family. Your real family before you lost everything." So Henry told her. He told her about his father, who had been a successful businessman until a partner's fraud destroyed everything. He told her about his mother, who had been elegant and refined but had adapted to poverty with grace. He told her about the months living in their car, the shame and fear, the hunger and cold. "George Patterson found us on the worst night," Henry said. "My mother was burning with fever. My father was trying to decide whether to rob a store to get money for medicine. I was crying because I was so hungry. George knocked on the car window and asked if we needed help. My father was too proud to say yes, but George saw the truth anyway. He gave us jobs, a home, medical care, and most importantly, dignity. He never made us feel like charity cases. He treated us like family." "What happened to your parents?" "My mother recovered and lived another 20 years. She died of a stroke when I was 30. My father rebuilt his business with George's help and eventually paid back every penny George had spent on us, though George tried to refuse it. My father died 5 years ago. Heart attack." "I'm sorry." "They had good lives in the end. My father learned from his mistakes. He became more careful, more ethical in his business dealings. My mother enjoyed her later years, traveling and spending time with friends. They were happy, which is all I wanted for them." "And you? Were you happy?" Henry considered the question. "I was driven. I wanted to prove that my father's failure didn't define me. I wanted to build something that couldn't be taken away. I succeeded beyond my wildest dreams financially, but somewhere along the way I forgot about the other parts of life. The relationships, the connections, the simple joys. I woke up one day and realized I had everything except what actually mattered. And now I have a chance to fix that. You and Dorothy have reminded me what matters. Family. Connection. Caring for people. Making a difference in someone's life. These past few days have been more fulfilling than the past 5 years of business success." Rebecca squeezed his hands. "You've made a difference in our lives. You've literally saved us. I hope we can make a difference in yours too." "You already have." They walked back to the house in comfortable silence. At the door, Rebecca turned to him. "Thank you for tonight. For the honesty, for listening, for understanding. Thank you for trusting me with your story." Inside, they found Mrs. Patterson sitting with Dorothy while Patricia had gone home for the evening. Dorothy was laughing at something Mrs. Patterson had said, looking more alive than Henry had yet seen her. "There you two are," Dorothy called out. "Mrs. Patterson has been telling me stories about Henry as a young man. Did you know he once accidentally set the kitchen on fire trying to make toast?" "I was 12 and distracted," Henry protested, but he was smiling. "He's been causing trouble in this house since he was a boy," Mrs. Patterson said fondly. "Some things never change." They spent the rest of the evening together, trading stories and laughing. It felt natural, comfortable, like they'd been a family for years instead of days. When everyone finally headed to bed, Henry stood in his room looking out at the garden. A week ago, he'd been alone in this house, eating dinner by himself, going to bed with only business worries to occupy his mind. Now his house was full of life. Full of laughter and conversation and purpose. Full of people who were starting to matter to him more than he'd thought possible in such a short time. He thought about Rebecca's confession that she was falling for him. About his own growing feelings that he couldn't quite name yet. About the possibility that this practical arrangement might be becoming something real and genuine and good. As he fell asleep, Henry realized something important. He wasn't just helping Rebecca and Dorothy anymore. They were helping him too. They were teaching him how to live again, how to open his heart again, how to build a family again. The small moments were adding up. Breakfast cooked with care. Honest conversations in the garden. Laughter over old photographs. Shared meals and simple companionship. Trust was being built, brick by brick, moment by moment. And with that trust came the possibility of something Henry hadn't dared to hope for in years. The possibility of love. 1 month after Rebecca and Dorothy's arrival, the Caldwell mansion had transformed into a real home. Routines had been established. Dorothy's health continued to improve under Patricia's expert care. Rebecca had taken over most of the cooking, and the household had adapted to her presence in the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson and Rebecca had developed a warm friendship, and the two women often worked together preparing meals. Henry found himself changing too. He worked from home more often, turning down business trips he would have taken without question before. He looked forward to breakfast conversations and evening walks. He caught himself smiling for no particular reason. One Saturday morning, Henry woke to find bright sunshine streaming through his windows. The last of the winter snow had melted, and the first signs of spring were appearing in the garden. He dressed and headed downstairs, following the scent of fresh coffee and something baking. In the kitchen, Rebecca was pulling a tray of cinnamon rolls from the oven. She wore jeans and a red sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was singing softly to herself, swaying slightly to music only she could hear. Henry paused in the doorway, struck by how beautiful she looked. Not just physically beautiful, though she was that, but beautiful in the way she moved, the way she smiled, the contentment that had replaced the fear in her eyes. She turned and saw him watching. "Good morning. I made cinnamon rolls. Your actual breakfast is coming, but I thought we could have something sweet first." "You're spoiling me. You deserve to be spoiled after everything you've done for us." She poured him coffee and plated a warm cinnamon roll. "Mama is doing so well this morning. Patricia says her oxygen levels are the best they've been since we arrived. She's talking about going for an actual walk in the garden today, not just sitting in the wheelchair." "That's wonderful news." Rebecca sat across from him with her own coffee. "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "About our arrangement. The original plan. We never really finished that conversation your mother started about marriage and feelings. We said we'd give ourselves time, and we have. A month has passed. Maybe it's time we talked about what comes next." Henry set down his coffee cup. "I've been thinking about that too. And I think the original arrangement doesn't make sense anymore." Rebecca's face fell slightly. "Oh, you want us to leave?" "What? No, that's not what I meant at all." Henry reached across the table and took her hand. "I mean, the arrangement doesn't make sense because it was supposed to be practical and transactional, and what we have now is neither of those things. What do we have? Something real. Something that's growing into friendship, and maybe more than friendship. Something I don't want to reduce to a business transaction." Rebecca smiled, relief clear on her face. "I feel the same way. When I answered your advertisement, I was desperate. I needed help for Mama, and I was willing to marry a stranger to get it. But now you're not a stranger anymore. You're someone I care about. Someone I think about all the time. Someone I want to spend time with, not because I have to but because I genuinely enjoy your company. So what do we do with that?" "I don't know. What do you want to do?" Henry considered his words carefully. "I want to court you properly. Not as part of a mail-order arrangement, but as a man who's interested in a woman he admires. I want to take you on dates. I want to get to know you better. I want to see if what we're feeling grows into something lasting." Rebecca's smile widened. "I'd like that very much. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people getting to know each other and seeing where it leads. Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Are you doing this because you actually want to, or because you feel obligated? Because I'm living in your house and you've been so generous to us?" I need to know this is real, Henry, not just you being kind. It was a fair question and one Henry had asked himself repeatedly over the past month. It's real. Yes, I care about you and Dorothy. Yes, I want to help you. But that's separate from this. When I think about you, when I look forward to seeing you, when I miss you when you're not around, that has nothing to do with obligation. That's just how I feel. How do you feel? Like I want to know everything about you. Your favorite color, your biggest fears, your secret dreams. What makes you laugh, what makes you cry, what you think about when you're alone. I want to understand who you are beyond the brave, loyal daughter who showed up at my door. I want to know Rebecca, the complete person. Rebecca's eyes were shining. My favorite color is green. The deep, rich green of leaves in summer. I'm afraid of thunderstorms because I was caught in a tornado when I was 7. My secret dream has always been to open my own restaurant someday, a small place where people feel welcome and the food makes them remember home. I laugh at silly jokes and physical comedy. I cry at sad movies and stories about people overcoming adversity. When I'm alone, I think about my grandmother and the lessons she taught me about cooking and life. Tell me more about your grandmother. So Rebecca did. They sat in the kitchen for the next hour, cinnamon rolls forgotten, while Rebecca talked about the woman who had raised her. Grandma Dorothy had been a force of nature, strong and stubborn and full of love. She taught Rebecca that food was more than sustenance. It was love made visible. Every meal was an opportunity to care for someone. She used to say that you could tell everything about a person by how they treated people who served them food, Rebecca said. Waiters, kitchen staff, anyone working with food. If someone was rude to service workers, they weren't worth knowing. Wise woman. She was. I miss her every day. When Mama got sick and I named her Dorothy in my grandmother's honor, it felt right. Like I was completing a circle somehow. Henry shared more about his own past, about growing up poor after his family's fall from grace, about working his way through college, about building his first business. He told her about relationships that had failed because the women were more interested in his money than in him. I got cynical, he admitted. I started to believe that genuine connection wasn't possible for me, that anyone I met would see the wealth first and the person second. That's part of why the mail order arrangement appealed to me. It was honest about the transactional nature of the relationship. But you're not cynical now? No. You've proven that good people still exist. People who value kindness and loyalty over money. I do value those things, but I'd be lying if I said your wealth didn't make a difference. It gave you the ability to help us when we desperately needed help. That matters. But it's not why you're still here. Rebecca shook her head. No. I'm here because I want to be. Because this house feels like home now. Because you feel like home. They were interrupted by Mrs. Patterson's arrival. She took in the scene in the kitchen, the untouched cinnamon rolls, the intensity of the conversation, and smiled knowingly. Don't let me interrupt. I'll just start on the grocery list for next week. Actually, Henry said, standing up, can you help me with something? I want to plan a proper date for Rebecca and me. Dinner somewhere nice, maybe a show or concert. What's good in the city right now? Mrs. Patterson's face lit up. About time you two acknowledged what's been obvious to everyone else for weeks. There's a wonderful new French restaurant downtown, and the symphony is playing next weekend. Very romantic. Perfect. Can you make reservations? Consider it done. After Mrs. Patterson bustled off to make calls, Rebecca looked at Henry with amusement. She's very pleased with herself. She's been rooting for us since the beginning, even when she pretended to disapprove. I like her. She reminds me of my grandmother in some ways. Tough on the outside but soft inside. They spent the rest of the morning together. Henry worked in his office while Rebecca helped Mrs. Patterson prepare lunch. At noon, they gathered in Dorothy's room as had become their custom. Dorothy was sitting in the wheelchair by the window, looking stronger every day. Her color was good, her breathing clear. The oxygen tank sat unused in the corner. Patricia says I can try walking without the oxygen today, Dorothy announced proudly. Just short distances at first, but still. Progress. That's wonderful, Mama, Rebecca said, kissing her mother's cheek. It is wonderful. This morning I walked to the bathroom and back without getting winded. A month ago I couldn't stand without help. Now look at me. Henry felt a surge of satisfaction. This was why he'd opened his door to them. This moment, seeing Dorothy healthy and happy, seeing Rebecca's face light up with joy, this made everything worthwhile. After lunch they all went out to the garden. It was the first warm day of spring and the garden was starting to bloom. Daffodils pushed up through the soil. Early flowering trees showed hints of pink and white blossoms. Birds sang in the branches. Patricia walked slowly beside Dorothy, ready to help if needed. But Dorothy walked on her own, using a cane for balance but moving steadily. She stopped frequently to look at flowers, to comment on the beauty of the garden, to simply breathe fresh air. "This is heaven," Dorothy said, tilting her face up to the sun. "A month ago, I thought I'd never see another spring. Now here I am, walking in a beautiful garden, surrounded by people who care about me. It's a miracle." "You're the miracle, Mama," Rebecca said. "Your strength, your determination to get better." "I had reasons to get better. I want to see what happens between you and Henry. I want to dance at your wedding. I want to hold my grandchildren someday if you're blessed with them. I want to live." That evening, after Dorothy had been settled for the night, Henry and Rebecca took their walk through the garden again. It had become their special time, a chance to talk without interruption. "Mama mentioned grandchildren today," Rebecca said as they walked. "I don't know if I can have children. I've never tried, obviously, but there's a history of fertility issues in my family. Does that worry you?" "Sometimes. I've always wanted children. I think I'd be a good mother. But I also know it might not happen, and I've made peace with that possibility. If we can't have biological children, we could adopt. There are so many children who need homes." Rebecca stopped walking. "You said we. Like it's a given that we'll be together long term. Isn't it? I mean, we're taking things slowly, getting to know each other properly. But Rebecca, I can't imagine my future without you in it. Can you imagine yours without me?" "No," she said softly. "I can't. Even when I try to be cautious, try to protect myself from potential hurt, I can't imagine going back to a life without you in it." Henry cupped her face in his hands. "Then let's stop being cautious. Let's be honest instead. I'm falling in love with you, Rebecca Sullivan. Maybe I've been falling since the moment you stepped out of that taxi with your mother. Maybe it started with your letters. I don't know when it began, but I know what I feel now." "I'm falling in love with you too," Rebecca whispered. "I tried not to. I told myself it was too fast, too risky, too complicated. But my heart didn't listen to logic." They stood in the garden under the stars, close enough to feel each other's warmth. Henry leaned in slowly, giving Rebecca time to pull away if she wanted. But she didn't pull away. She met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then deeper. It tasted like hope and promise and the beginning of something beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," Henry admitted. "So have I." They walked back to the house hand in hand, comfortable in the silence. Inside, they found Mrs. Patterson reading in the library and Patricia finishing her notes for the day. "Dorothy's asleep," Patricia reported. "She had a good day. I'm very pleased with her progress. At this rate, she'll be off most of her medications in another month." "That's incredible," Rebecca said. "It really is. The human body is remarkable when given proper care and time to heal. Your mother is proof of that." After Patricia left, Henry and Rebecca sat in the library with Mrs. Patterson. They didn't talk much, just enjoyed being together. Henry read a book. Rebecca worked on a grocery list for the next week's meals. Mrs. Patterson knitted something that might have been a scarf. It felt domestic and comfortable and right. This was what Henry had been missing all these years. Not grand gestures or expensive experiences, but simple moments of togetherness with people he cared about. Later, as Henry prepared for bed, he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. A month ago, Rebecca had been a stranger from letters. Now she was someone he was falling in love with. Dorothy had been a dying woman he'd taken in out of compassion. Now she was someone he thought of as family. His house had been empty and quiet. Now it was full of life and love and laughter. He'd thought he was doing Rebecca and Dorothy a favor by letting them stay. But they were doing him a favor too. They were teaching him how to live again, how to love again, how to build a family again. The walls he'd built around his heart were coming down, brick by brick. And what was emerging in their place was something he'd almost given up on finding. A real chance at happiness. A real chance at love. A real chance at building the family he'd always wanted. As Henry fell asleep, he smiled, thinking about the kiss in the garden and the promise of more to come. The journey was just beginning, but he was exactly where he wanted to be. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. Henry woke early, excited in a way he hadn't been in years. Today he was taking Rebecca and Dorothy to St. Mark's Community Church, the church he'd attended sporadically over the years. It would be Dorothy's first real outing beyond the garden, and it would be the town's first real introduction to the women living in the Caldwell mansion. Mrs. Patterson arrived early to help Dorothy get ready. Patricia came in to check vitals and make sure Dorothy was strong enough for the outing. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia asked as she listened to Dorothy's heart. It's only been a month since you arrived and you were very sick. I'm sure, Dorothy said firmly. I haven't been to church in 6 months. I've missed it terribly. Besides, people need to see that I'm real and that I'm not dying. Why would people think you're dying? Patricia asked, confused. Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Because the gossip in town is already out of control. Mrs. Patterson told me yesterday that the rumors range from me being a gold digger who trapped a lonely rich man to Henry running some kind of charity for sick people. Apparently, the whole town is talking about us. Henry joined them, looking handsome in a dark suit. Then let's give them something real to talk about. We're a family. Not a conventional family maybe, but a real one. There's nothing to hide or be ashamed of. Dorothy beamed at him. Spoken like a man with nothing to hide. Help me into that blue dress, Rebecca. If I'm going to be the subject of gossip, I'm going to look good doing it. An hour later they were ready. Dorothy wore a beautiful blue dress that Mrs. Patterson had helped alter to fit her smaller frame. Rebecca wore a simple green dress that brought out her eyes. Henry wore his best suit. They looked like a family heading to Sunday service. The drive to St. Mark's took 15 minutes. The church was a beautiful old stone building that had stood at the center of the small town for over 100 years. As they pulled into the parking lot, Henry could see people arriving, greeting each other, catching up on the week's news. He helped Dorothy out of the car and into the wheelchair they'd brought for longer outings. Rebecca pushed while Henry walked beside them. The conversations around them stopped as people noticed the unusual group. Henry recognized many faces. Tom Morrison, his doctor, who smiled and waved. James Chin, his business partner, who was there with his wife Linda. Margaret Foster, who ran the local library. Robert Martinez, who owned the hardware store. Dozens of people he'd known for years, all staring with obvious curiosity. Father Michael, the elderly priest who'd been at St. Mark's for 30 years, came forward with a warm smile. Henry, how wonderful to see you. And you must be Rebecca and Dorothy. Welcome to St. Mark's. Thank you, Father, Rebecca said. It's lovely to be here. I understand you've been recovering from illness, Dorothy. How are you feeling? Much better, thanks to excellent medical care and good people taking care of me. Father Michael's eyes twinkled. Yes, I've heard quite a bit about the situation. You know how small towns are. Everyone knows everyone's business, whether they should or not. Then maybe we should clear up any confusion right now, Henry said. He raised his voice slightly so the people gathered nearby could hear. Rebecca is my intended wife. Dorothy is her mother and now part of my household. They're both staying at my home permanently, and I couldn't be happier about it. The silence was absolute. Then Linda Chin stepped forward, a kind smile on her face. How wonderful. Rebecca, we should have lunch sometime. I'd love to get to know you better. It was like a dam breaking. Other women came forward to introduce themselves. Margaret Foster invited Rebecca to join the church's book club. Sarah Williams, who taught at the local elementary school, asked if Dorothy would be interested in joining the senior activities group that met at the church every Wednesday. Within minutes, Rebecca and Dorothy were surrounded by friendly faces and genuine welcomes. The gossip hadn't disappeared completely. Henry could still see some people whispering and staring, but the overall reception was warmer than he'd hoped. The service was beautiful. Father Michael gave a sermon about acceptance and community that felt pointed but kind. Dorothy sang the hymns in a surprisingly strong voice. Rebecca held Henry's hand during the prayers. After the service, they were invited to the community hall for coffee and donuts. Dorothy held court from her wheelchair, charming everyone who spoke to her. She told funny stories about her years as a teacher. She asked thoughtful questions about people's lives. She had a natural warmth that drew people in. Rebecca was quieter but equally engaging. She talked about her love of cooking with the women who ran the church's monthly potluck dinners. She listened with genuine interest as people shared about their families and their lives in the town. Henry watched with pride. This was what he'd hoped for. Not just acceptance but genuine connection. His family being welcomed into the community that had been his home for years. James Chin pulled Henry aside. You look happy, my friend. Happier than I've seen you in years. I am happy. Rebecca seems wonderful. And her mother is delightful. The whole town will adore her within a week. I hope so. I want them to feel welcome here, to feel like this is their home. They will. You're giving them a chance at a real life, Henry. That's a beautiful thing. Dr. Morrison joined them. Dorothy's recovery is remarkable. I stopped by yesterday to check on her, and her vital signs are better than I expected. With continued care, she could have many good years ahead. That's what we're hoping for. And Rebecca? How is she adjusting? Henry smiled without meaning to. She's amazing. Strong, kind, talented. I'm falling in love with her, Tom. About time you fell in love with someone, Dr. Morrison said with a grin. You deserve happiness, Henry. You've worked hard and given generously to this community. It's wonderful to see you finding personal fulfillment too. The morning stretched into early afternoon. Dorothy was getting tired but refused to leave until she'd talked to everyone who wanted to meet her. Finally, Father Michael suggested they should probably get Dorothy home to rest. You've charmed the entire congregation, he told her. But we don't want you to overdo it on your first outing. On the drive home, Dorothy was glowing. That was wonderful. Everyone was so welcoming. I haven't felt this included in a community in years. They loved you, Mama, Rebecca said. I heard at least 5 different women invite you to various activities and clubs. And I'm going to say yes to all of them. I've spent 2 years feeling like a burden, like I was dying and had nothing to contribute. Today I felt alive again. I felt useful. I felt like I mattered. Henry met Rebecca's eyes in the rearview mirror. She was crying happy tears. Back at the house, Patricia was waiting to check Dorothy's vitals. How was your adventure? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The people were lovely, the service was beautiful, and I didn't even get too tired. Well, your blood pressure is a little elevated, which is to be expected after such an active morning. Let's get you settled for a rest. While Patricia helped Dorothy, Henry and Rebecca went to the kitchen where Mrs. Patterson had prepared a light lunch. How did it go? She asked eagerly. Better than I could have hoped, Henry said. Dorothy was the star of the show. Everyone loved her. And Rebecca? Was amazing as always. Mrs. Patterson smiled. Good. This town needs to see that you 3 are a real family, not some scandalous arrangement. Once they get to know you, they'll understand. After lunch, Rebecca insisted on doing the dishes despite Mrs. Patterson's protests. Henry dried while she washed, working in comfortable companionship. Thank you for today, Rebecca said. For taking us to church, for introducing us to the community, for not being ashamed of our unconventional situation. Why would I be ashamed? I'm proud to have you and Dorothy in my life. Not everyone would feel that way. Some people would worry about their reputation. My reputation is based on how I treat people, not on conforming to narrow expectations. If people can't accept that I've welcomed you and your mother into my home and my life, that's their problem, not mine. Rebecca smiled. You're a good man, Henry Caldwell. I'm trying to be. That evening, as had become their tradition, Henry and Rebecca walked in the garden after dinner. Spring was progressing quickly and new flowers seemed to bloom every day. I've been thinking, Rebecca said as they walked, about the future. About what comes next. What have you been thinking? That I want to contribute more. I love cooking for everyone, but I want to do more than just take care of the household. I want to have purpose beyond being Dorothy's daughter or your intended wife. What kind of purpose? I don't know yet. Maybe volunteering somewhere. Maybe taking some classes. Maybe eventually working toward that dream of opening a restaurant. I just know I don't want to be defined solely by my relationships. Henry stopped walking and turned to face her. That's important to you? Having your own identity? Very important. I lost myself when Mama got sick. For 2 years I was just a caregiver. I forgot who Rebecca was beyond that role. Now that I have the space and security to remember, I want to reclaim that part of myself. I think that's wonderful. What can I do to support that? Just don't expect me to be content as just the lady of the manor. I need more than that. Rebecca, I don't want you to be content with just one role. I want you to be fully yourself, whatever that means. If you want to volunteer, do it. If you want to take classes, I'll pay for them. If you want to work toward opening a restaurant, we'll make it happen. Your dreams matter to me. She hugged him suddenly, fiercely. How did I get so lucky to find you? I think I'm the lucky one. They stood in the garden as the sun set, holding each other, comfortable in the silence. After a while, Rebecca spoke again. Henry, can I ask you something serious? Of course. Do you believe in fate? In the idea that some things are meant to be? Henry considered the question. I believe in choices and consequences. I believe that we create our own destinies through the decisions we make. But I also believe that sometimes circumstances align in ways that feel miraculous. Why do you ask? Because of how we found each other. You placed an advertisement at exactly the moment I was desperate enough to answer it. I showed up at your door on the one night when turning us away would have been easier than helping us, but you chose to help anyway. My mother was sick enough to need immediate care but not so sick that she couldn't recover with treatment. Every piece had to fall into place perfectly for us to be here right now. That feels like more than just coincidence. Maybe it is. Maybe some force in the universe decided we needed each other and arranged for our paths to cross. Do you really believe that? I believe that whatever brought us together, whether fate or chance or divine intervention, I'm grateful for it. You and Dorothy have changed my life for the better. I was existing before you came. Now I'm actually living. I feel the same way. Before we came here, I was just surviving day by day, focused only on keeping Mama alive. Now I'm thinking about the future again. Making plans, having dreams, feeling hope. You gave us that. We gave that to each other. As darkness fell, they walked back to the house hand in hand. Inside, they found Dorothy in the library with Mrs. Patterson, looking at a calendar and marking dates. What are you planning? Rebecca asked. Activities, Dorothy said happily. On Wednesdays, I'm going to the senior group at the church. Sarah Williams invited me to help with the children's reading program at the library on Fridays. Margaret Foster wants me to join her book club that meets every other Tuesday. And Linda Chin is organizing a cooking demonstration at the community center next month, and she wants me to attend. Mama, that's a lot of activity for someone who was bedridden a month ago. Which is exactly why I'm doing it. I spent 2 years watching life pass me by. Now I have energy and opportunities and I'm not going to waste a single moment. Henry smiled at Dorothy's enthusiasm. Just promise us you won't overdo it. Patricia would have my head if you exhaust yourself. I promise to listen to my body and rest when I need to. But I'm done sitting on the sidelines of life, Henry. I'm jumping back in with both feet. Later, as Henry prepared for bed, he reflected on the day. The successful introduction to the community. Rebecca's desire for purpose and identity beyond their relationship. Dorothy's determination to fully engage with life again. Everything was moving forward in positive ways. The family they were building together was growing stronger. The love between him and Rebecca was deepening. Dorothy's health continued to improve. For the first time in his adult life, Henry felt truly content. Not just satisfied with his circumstances, but genuinely happy with the life he was living and the people he was sharing it with. He thought about Rebecca's question about fate. Whether their meeting was destined or coincidental didn't really matter. What mattered was what they chose to do with the opportunity they'd been given. And they were choosing to build something beautiful together. A family based on love and respect and genuine care for each other. A home filled with laughter and warmth and purpose. As Henry fell asleep, he smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new joys and new opportunities to deepen the connections they were building. The town had learned about their love today and they had accepted it. Now it was time to continue building on that foundation, to keep growing together, to keep choosing each other every single day. The journey was far from over. But it was heading in exactly the right direction. 3 months into Rebecca and Dorothy's stay at the Caldwell mansion, spring had fully arrived. The garden burst with color. Birds sang in the trees. The house felt alive with warmth and activity. Dorothy had become a fixture in the community. She volunteered at the library twice a week, helped with the church's senior programs, and had even started teaching a cooking class at the community center. Her energy and enthusiasm were contagious. Rebecca had found her own rhythm too. She took online business courses in the mornings while planning menus and cooking in the afternoons. She'd started a small catering business from the mansion's kitchen, providing meals for community events and private parties. Henry supported every endeavor, proud of her initiative and talent. Their relationship had deepened naturally over the months. They spent evenings together, talking about their days, planning for the future, simply enjoying each other's company. They'd shared kisses and tender moments, but they'd also maintained appropriate boundaries, respecting the unconventional nature of their situation. One Sunday afternoon, Dorothy asked Henry to join her in the library. It was unusual. She typically spent Sunday afternoons resting after the morning service. "We need to talk," she said seriously once Henry sat down. "That sounds ominous." Dorothy smiled. "Not ominous. Important. Henry, you and my daughter have been dancing around each other for 3 months now. You're clearly in love with each other, but you're both being too cautious. It's time we talked about what comes next. Rebecca and I have discussed this. We're taking things slowly. Too slowly. Life is short, Henry. I learned that lesson when my heart started failing. You can plan and prepare and wait for the perfect moment, but perfect moments don't just appear. You have to create them. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you marry my daughter. Properly, with a real proposal and a beautiful ceremony. Not because of some mail-order arrangement, but because you love her and she loves you." Henry sat back in his chair. "Dorothy, I do love her. Very much. But is it too soon? We've only known each other for 3 months. My husband proposed after 6 weeks. We were married for 50 years and happy every single day. When you know, you know. Do you know? Yes. I know Rebecca is the person I want to spend my life with. I know I can't imagine my future without her. I know I love her more than I thought possible. Then what are you waiting for? I guess I'm worried about rushing her. She's been through so much. I don't want her to feel pressured or to say yes because she's grateful rather than because she truly wants to marry me. Dorothy laughed, a warm sound full of affection. Henry Caldwell, my daughter talks about you constantly. She plans her days around seeing you. She lights up when you walk into a room. She's not grateful, she's in love. The only thing holding her back is the same fear holding you back. You're both afraid of moving too fast, so you're stuck in this holding pattern. How do I know she'll say yes? You don't. That's the scary part of love. You have to take the risk without knowing the outcome. But I can tell you this, my daughter has never looked at anyone the way she looks at you. She's never talked about anyone with such tenderness and respect. She's never been this happy. Ask her to marry you, Henry. I promise you won't regret it. Henry considered Dorothy's words. She was right about the holding pattern. He and Rebecca had settled into a comfortable routine, but they hadn't taken the next step. Maybe it was time. If I were to propose, how would you suggest I do it? Dorothy's eyes sparkled. I have some ideas. But first, I need your promise on something. What's that? Promise me that when you two get married, you'll let me be part of the ceremony. I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to see her married to a good man. I want to dance at the reception, even if I can only manage one song. Promise me I'll be there. Henry felt his throat tighten. Dorothy, you'll be there. Of course you'll be there. Good. Because that's all I want now. To see Rebecca happy and settled with someone who loves her the way she deserves. Then I can rest easy, knowing she'll be taken care of when I'm gone. You're not going anywhere. You're healthy and strong. I'm better, but I'm also realistic. My heart is damaged. I've had more time than the doctors in Ohio predicted, and I'm grateful for every extra day. But whenever my time comes, I want to know Rebecca has you. Promise me you'll take care of her. I promise. With everything I have, I promise. Dorothy reached out and patted his hand. I know you will. Now let's plan this proposal. They spent the next hour plotting. Dorothy had romantic ideas that surprised Henry. She suggested the rose garden at sunset with candles and music and flowers. Henry added his own touches, a special dinner, a ring he'd already secretly purchased weeks ago, words from his heart. When? Henry asked. This week. Friday. We'll tell Rebecca you have a business dinner in the city, then surprise her with the real plan. Mrs. Patterson and I will help with the setup. Patricia can make sure I'm rested and ready. It will be perfect. Friday arrived faster than Henry expected. He was nervous in a way he hadn't been since his first major business presentation. This mattered more than any business deal. This was his future, his happiness, his life. Mrs. Patterson and Dorothy had been busy all day, setting up the rose garden according to their plan. Patricia helped Dorothy conserve her energy so she'd be able to attend the proposal. Rebecca had been told Henry had a business dinner and wouldn't be home until late. At 6 o'clock, Henry went to find Rebecca. She was in the kitchen, cleaning up after preparing dinner for Dorothy and Mrs. Patterson. I thought you had a business dinner, she said when she saw him. I lied. I have something else planned. Will you come with me? Where are we going? You'll see. Trust me? She dried her hands and took off her apron. Always. Henry led her through the house and out toward the garden. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. As they approached the rose garden, Rebecca gasped. The entire garden had been transformed. White candles flickered in glass holders along the paths. Rose petals covered the ground. Soft music played from hidden speakers. In the center of the garden, a small table was set with fine china and silver, but it wasn't set for dinner. It held a single perfect rose and a small velvet box. Dorothy sat in a chair nearby, dressed in her best dress, smiling through happy tears. Mrs. Patterson stood beside her, equally emotional. Patricia waited at a respectful distance, ready if Dorothy needed her. Henry, what is this? Rebecca's voice shook. This is me being brave enough to take a risk. This is me choosing to create a perfect moment instead of waiting for one to appear. He led her to the center of the garden and took both her hands in his. Rebecca, 3 months ago you showed up at my door with your mother, terrified I'd turn you away. You'd lost everything except your determination to save the person you loved most. You were strong and brave and loyal, and I was captivated immediately. Tears were already streaming down Rebecca's face. These 3 months have been the happiest of my life. You've taught me what home really means. You've reminded me that wealth without love is worthless. You've given me purpose and joy and a reason to look forward to each new day. You've made me a better man simply by being in my life. He dropped to one knee and Rebecca made a small sound of surprise. I love you, Rebecca Sullivan. I love your strength and your kindness. I love your determination and your compassion. I love the way you care for your mother and the way you've opened your heart to me. I love you completely and unconditionally, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that love every single day. He opened the velvet box, revealing a beautiful emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. Will you marry me? Not because of any arrangement or obligation, but because we love each other and want to build a life together? Will you be my wife? Rebecca was crying too hard to speak at first. She looked at Henry, then at her mother, then back at Henry. Finally, she found her voice. Yes. Yes, Henry, I'll marry you. I love you so much. Yes. Henry stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he kissed her, properly and thoroughly, while Dorothy clapped and Mrs. Patterson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. When they finally pulled apart, Rebecca was laughing through her tears. You planned all this? Your mother helped. She's the one who told me to stop being cautious and take a chance on love. Rebecca turned to Dorothy. Mama, you knew? Of course I knew. I've been watching you two fall in love for months. Someone had to push you both to actually do something about it. Dorothy stood up carefully and Rebecca rushed to embrace her. Thank you, Mama. For everything. For pushing me to answer that advertisement, for being strong enough to survive, for encouraging me to be happy. That's what mothers do, baby. We want our children to have the lives we dreamed for them. And you're going to have a beautiful life with Henry. I can feel it in my bones. Mrs. Patterson approached with a bottle of champagne. I thought we might celebrate. They gathered around the small table, Dorothy sitting in her chair while the others stood nearby. Henry poured champagne for everyone, sparkling cider for Dorothy because of her medications. To Rebecca and Henry, Dorothy said, raising her glass. May your marriage be filled with love, laughter, and countless beautiful moments. May you always choose each other, every single day. And may you remember that the best things in life are the people we love and the memories we create together. They clinked glasses and drank. The sunset painted the garden in brilliant colors. The candles flickered gently. The music played softly. When should we get married? Rebecca asked, looking at her ring in wonder. Whenever you want, Henry replied. Tomorrow, next month, next year. I'm yours whenever you're ready. Soon, Rebecca decided. I don't want a long engagement. I don't need a huge wedding. I just want to be your wife. How soon is soon? Rebecca looked at her mother. How long do you need to plan a wedding, Mama? Dorothy smiled. If we keep it simple and focus on what matters, we could plan something beautiful in a month. Small ceremony, just family and close friends, maybe here in the garden. What do you think? I think that sounds perfect. The rest of the evening was spent celebrating and planning. They decided on a ceremony in the garden on a Saturday afternoon in early May. The guest list would be small. Just the household staff, Dr. Morrison and his wife, James and Linda Chin, Father Michael to perform the ceremony, and a handful of other friends from the community. No big production, Rebecca insisted. Just the people who matter, celebrating something real and meaningful. I'll make the wedding cake, Dorothy announced. It's tradition for the bride's mother to contribute something special. Mama, are you sure you're up for that? I'm certain. I've been teaching that cooking class at the community center. I know what I'm doing. Besides, I want my contribution to the wedding to be something from my hands and heart. As the evening grew late and Dorothy became tired, Patricia helped her back to the house. Mrs. Patterson followed, leaving Henry and Rebecca alone in the candlelit garden. I can't believe this is real, Rebecca said, looking at her ring again. I can't believe I'm engaged to you. That we're actually getting married. Believe it? You're stuck with me now. She laughed. I can think of worse fates. Henry, I know I've said this before, but thank you. For taking a chance on us. For opening your home and your heart. For loving me when I didn't think anyone would. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. For trusting me with your mother's care. For letting me into your life. For teaching me what real love looks like. They stood together in the garden, surrounded by roses and candlelight, planning their future. They talked about the wedding, about their hopes for married life, about growing old together. I want children, Rebecca said. If we're blessed with them, biological or adopted. I want to fill this house with the sound of children's laughter. I want that too. I want to be a father. I want to raise children with you and teach them what really matters in life. What matters? Love, kindness, helping people who need help, making the world a little better than we found it. The lessons George Patterson taught me, the lessons your grandmother taught you, those are what matter. We'll teach them together. As midnight approached, they finally made their way back to the house. At Rebecca's door, Henry kissed her goodnight, a kiss full of promise and love. For weeks, she said. For weeks and I'll be your wife. I can't wait. Henry climbed the stairs to his own room, his heart full. In 1 month he would marry the woman he loved. Dorothy would be there to see it. They would start their life together officially, building on the foundation they'd already created. He thought about Dorothy's words earlier, about creating perfect moments instead of waiting for them. She was right. Tonight had been perfect not because everything was flawless, but because it was genuine and filled with love. The next 4 weeks would fly by in a flurry of wedding preparations. But then would come a lifetime of building a life together, of creating more perfect moments, of choosing love every single day. As Henry fell asleep, he smiled, thinking about Rebecca's face when he'd asked her to marry him. The joy, the tears, the absolute certainty in her voice when she said yes. For weeks until he made her his wife. For weeks until their journey together truly began. He couldn't wait. The month between the proposal and the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Rebecca worked with Mrs. Patterson on wedding preparations while continuing her catering business. Dorothy supervised from her chair, offering advice and assistance while working on the wedding cake. Henry handled the practical details: permits for the ceremony, catering for the reception, arrangements for guests traveling from out of town. The guest list remained small by design. Besides the immediate household, they'd invited Dr. Morrison and his wife Sarah, James and Linda Chin, several people from the church community, and a few of Henry's business associates who had become genuine friends over the years. Rebecca's dress was simple but elegant, a cream-colored gown that Mrs. Patterson helped alter to fit perfectly. Dorothy insisted on wearing her best blue dress, the one she'd worn to church that first Sunday. Blue for something old and something blue all at once, she joked. I'm efficient that way. On the morning of the wedding, the household buzzed with energy. Mrs. Patterson had recruited help from the church to handle setup and catering. The garden was being transformed with white chairs, an arch covered in roses, and tables set with simple but elegant decorations. Rebecca was in her room, being helped into her dress by Mrs. Patterson and Linda Chin. Dorothy sat in a chair nearby, already dressed and looking radiant despite her illness. You look beautiful, baby, Dorothy said, tears in her eyes. Like a princess in a fairy tale. I feel beautiful, and terrified, and excited, and like I might throw up any second. Linda laughed. That's perfectly normal. I felt the same way when I married James. But once the ceremony starts, all the nerves disappear and you just feel the love. Mrs. Patterson fastened the last button on Rebecca's dress and stepped back. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Henry is going to lose his breath when he sees you. There was a knock on the door and Patricia peeked in. Everyone decent? I have a delivery for the bride. She entered carrying a beautiful bouquet of white roses mixed with greenery. These just arrived from Henry. There's a note. Rebecca took the bouquet with trembling hands and read the small card tucked among the flowers. Her eyes filled with tears. What does it say? Dorothy asked. Thank you for choosing to spend your life with me. I promise to spend every day earning that choice. All my love, Henry. That man, Mrs. Patterson said, dabbing at her own eyes. He's going to have us all crying before the ceremony even starts. Downstairs, Henry was in his study with James, who was serving as his best man. Henry wore a dark suit with a white rose boutonniere that matched Rebecca's bouquet. Nervous? James asked. Surprisingly, no. I'm excited, happy, maybe a little impatient for the ceremony to start, but not nervous. That's how you know it's right. When Sarah and I got married, I felt the same way. No doubts, no fear, just certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. That's exactly how I feel. Rebecca is my perfect match. Not because she's perfect, because nobody is, but because we're perfect together. There was a knock at the door and Dr. Morrison entered. The guests are all seated. Father Michael is ready. It's time, gentlemen. Henry took a deep breath. Let's do this. They walked out to the garden where about 40 people were seated in neat rows. The May afternoon was perfect, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of roses. Father Michael stood under the flower-covered arch, looking dignified in his vestments. Henry took his place at the front, James beside him. The string quartet Mrs. Patterson had hired began to play. The guests stood and turned toward the house. First came Mrs. Patterson, walking slowly down the aisle in a beautiful lavender dress, tears already streaming down her face. Then Patricia, also emotional in a soft pink dress. The music shifted, and Dorothy appeared at the entrance to the garden. She walked slowly but steadily, using her cane but refusing any other assistance. She wore her blue dress and a corsage of white roses. She made her way down the aisle to scattered applause, the community celebrating her recovery as much as the wedding itself. Dorothy took her seat in the front row and the music changed again. Rebecca appeared and Henry forgot to breathe. She looked radiant in her cream dress, the sunlight catching in her hair, the bouquet he'd sent clutched in her hands. She was smiling through tears, her eyes locked on his. There was no one to give her away. She walked down the aisle alone, independent and strong, choosing with every step to come to him. Henry felt his own tears start to fall. This woman, this incredible, strong, kind woman was choosing him. Rebecca reached the arch and took his hands. They stood facing each other while Father Michael began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the marriage of Henry Caldwell and Rebecca Sullivan. Marriage is not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, thoughtfully, and with deep love and commitment. Father Michael paused and looked at the couple before him. Henry and Rebecca's path to this moment has been unconventional. They met through unusual circumstances. They've built their relationship on a foundation of kindness, trust, and genuine care for each other. Their love story is proof that the best things in life often come when we least expect them and in ways we never imagined. He addressed the guests. If anyone has reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence was absolute and approving. Henry and Rebecca have chosen to write their own vows. Henry, please begin. Henry squeezed Rebecca's hands and began to speak, his voice clear despite the emotion he felt. Rebecca, 3 months ago you walked into my life and changed everything. You taught me that a house is not a home until it's filled with people you love. You showed me that wealth means nothing without someone to share it with. You reminded me that the purpose of success is to lift others up, not to isolate yourself behind walls of money and status. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I promise to choose you every day in good times and bad. I promise to support your dreams and celebrate your victories. I promise to comfort you in sorrow and laugh with you in joy. I promise to be a partner, not a provider, a companion, not a benefactor. I promise to love you completely, honestly, and forever. Rebecca was crying openly now, but she smiled as she began her own vows. Henry, when I came to your door that cold February night, I was terrified you'd turn us away. Instead, you welcomed us with kindness I didn't know still existed in the world. You saved my mother's life. You gave us a home when we had nowhere to go. You offered dignity when we had nothing. She took a shaky breath. But you gave me something even more valuable than safety and security. You gave me hope. Hope that good people still exist. Hope that love is possible. Hope that I deserve happiness. You see me, really see me, not as someone in need of charity but as an equal, a partner, someone worthy of love and respect. Rebecca's voice grew stronger. I promise to love you with my whole heart. I promise to build a life with you based on honesty and trust. I promise to stand beside you in all of life's adventures. I promise to fill your home with laughter and warmth. I promise to choose you every single day for the rest of my life. Father Michael smiled. Beautiful. Now the rings, please. James handed Henry a simple gold band. Rebecca's ring, the emerald he'd given her at the proposal, would serve as her wedding ring as well. Henry slid the band onto Rebecca's finger beside her engagement ring. With this ring I thee wed. Rebecca placed a matching gold band on Henry's finger. With this ring I thee wed. By the power vested in me, Father Michael said, his voice full of joy, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Henry, you may kiss your bride. Henry pulled Rebecca close and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and love and joy. The guests erupted in applause and cheers. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing through tears. Father Michael presented them to the guests. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce to you for the first time Mr. and Mrs. Henry Caldwell. More applause as Henry and Rebecca walked back down the aisle, now married, now officially a family. Dorothy stood as they passed, reaching out to touch Rebecca's hand, tears of joy streaming down her face. The reception was held on the lawn, with tables set up under a large tent Mrs. Patterson had arranged. The food was simple but delicious, much of it prepared by Rebecca in the days before the wedding. Dorothy's cake stood as the centerpiece, a 3-layer masterpiece decorated with delicate sugar flowers. Henry and Rebecca cut the cake together, feeding each other small bites while the guests laughed and took photos. They danced their first dance as husband and wife to a song Rebecca had chosen, something soft and romantic that spoke of lasting love. Then Henry danced with Dorothy, moving slowly and carefully to accommodate her limitations but fulfilling his promise that she would dance at the wedding. "Thank you," Dorothy whispered as they moved, "for loving my daughter. For giving her the life she deserves. For making her happy. Thank you for raising such an incredible woman. Thank you for encouraging me to take a chance on love. Thank you for being part of our family. I'm grateful for every extra day I've been given. Grateful I lived long enough to see this moment. I can rest easy now knowing Rebecca has you. You're going to have many more moments with us. You're not going anywhere, Dorothy." She smiled but didn't argue. They both knew her time was limited, but today was not a day for sadness. Today was for celebration. The afternoon passed in a blur of joy. Toasts were given by James, by Mrs. Patterson, by Dr. Morrison. Each speech was heartfelt and genuine, celebrating not just the marriage but the love story that had brought them to this moment. As the sun began to set, the guests started to leave, offering hugs and congratulations. James and Linda were among the last to go. "You two are going to be so happy together," Linda said, hugging Rebecca. "I can see it in the way you look at each other." "Thank you for being part of this," Rebecca replied. "For welcoming me into the community. Your family now. We take care of our own." Finally, only the household remained. Mrs. Patterson and Patricia began cleanup while Dorothy rested in a chair, exhausted but happy. Henry and Rebecca walked through the garden as the last light faded from the sky. They decided against a honeymoon for now, wanting to stay close to Dorothy and settle into married life in the home they already shared. "We're married," Rebecca said wonderingly. "I'm your wife. And I'm your husband. How does it feel?" "Like the most natural thing in the world. Like we were always meant to end up here." They reached the spot where Henry had proposed a month earlier. The rose garden was still blooming, the flowers even more beautiful than they'd been on that night. "Do you remember what I said in my vows?" Henry asked. "About how you taught me that a house isn't a home until it's filled with people you love?" "I remember. This house became a home the night you and Dorothy arrived. But today it became something more. Today it became the place where we started our life together officially. Where we promised to choose each other every day. Where we committed to building something lasting." Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Henry Caldwell. I love the man you are, the kindness you show, the generosity you live. I love that you saw two strangers in need and didn't look away. I love that you made space in your life for us. I love you too, Rebecca Caldwell. I love your strength, your loyalty, your compassion. I love that you never gave up on your mother. I love that you took a chance on me." They stood together in the garden, now married, now bound together officially and eternally. The journey that had started with a desperate gamble, with a knock on a stranger's door, had led them here. To love. To family. To a home filled with warmth and joy and purpose. As they walked back to the house, Henry thought about all the things that had to align perfectly for this moment to happen. If he hadn't placed that advertisement. If Rebecca hadn't answered it. If he'd turned them away that first night. If Dorothy hadn't survived those first critical weeks. Any one of those things could have gone differently and they wouldn't be here now. Maybe Rebecca was right about fate. Maybe some force had decided they needed each other and arranged for their paths to cross. Or maybe it was just a series of fortunate choices that led to something beautiful. Either way, Henry was grateful. Grateful for every step that had brought them to this point. Grateful for Dorothy's wisdom and Mrs. Patterson's support. Grateful for Patricia's care and Dr. Morrison's treatment. Grateful for the community that had welcomed them. Most of all, grateful for Rebecca. For her courage in coming to his door. For her trust in letting him into her life. For her love that had transformed his world. They entered the house hand in hand, Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, beginning the next chapter of their journey together. The wedding had been filled with joy, just as they'd hoped. But the real celebration would be in the thousands of ordinary days ahead, in the life they would build together, in the love they would share. And Henry couldn't wait to experience every single one of those days with the woman he loved. The first year of Henry and Rebecca's marriage established patterns that would define their decades together. The transition from an unconventional arrangement to a genuine marriage was seamless, built on the foundation of friendship and respect they'd already established. Rebecca's catering business grew beyond anyone's expectations. What started as occasional jobs for community events evolved into a thriving business. Within 6 months of the wedding, she had steady clients throughout the region. Within a year, she was considering hiring help to meet demand. Henry supported her dream fully. He helped with business plans and financial management. He connected her with potential clients through his network. But he never took over or overshadowed her achievements. This was Rebecca's success, built on her talent and hard work. One evening over dinner, about 10 months into their marriage, Rebecca announced a new idea. "I've been thinking about the future of the catering business," she said. "About taking it to the next level." "What did you have in mind?" Henry asked. "A restaurant." "Not yet, maybe not for a few years, but eventually. A place where people can come for good food and genuine hospitality. Nothing fancy or pretentious, just honest food made with love." Dorothy, who still joined them for meals when she felt well enough, smiled broadly. "Your grandmother would be so proud. She always said you were meant to feed people." "I'd need investors, a location, staff, all sorts of things I don't have experience with." "We'll figure it out together," Henry said. "When you're ready, we'll make it happen." "You'd really invest in my restaurant dream?" "Rebecca, I'd invest in anything that brings you joy. Besides, I've tasted your cooking. The restaurant will be a huge success." Dorothy cleared her throat. "Before you two start planning restaurant empires, I have an announcement of my own." They both turned to look at her. Dorothy's health had been stable but not improving lately. Dr. Morrison had adjusted medications, but everyone knew her heart was continuing to deteriorate. "I want to plan something while I still have the energy," Dorothy said. "A big dinner party. Here at the house. I want to cook for all the people who've made this past year possible. Dr. Morrison and his wife. James and Linda. Father Michael. The church friends. Everyone who welcomed us and helped us build this life." "Mama, that's a lot of work," Rebecca said, concerned. "Are you sure you're up for it?" "I'm certain. I've been teaching cooking classes and helping with community events. I know my limits, and I want to do this while I still can. I want to give back to the community that embraced us." "We'll help you," Henry said immediately. "Whatever you need, we're here." "I know you are. That's why I want to do this. To show my gratitude while I'm still here to show it." The dinner party was planned for a Saturday evening in early March, just over a year since Rebecca and Dorothy had arrived at the mansion. Dorothy insisted on being involved in every detail of the planning. They invited 30 people, the core of the community that had supported them. Mrs. Patterson helped with logistics. Patricia monitored Dorothy's energy levels carefully. Rebecca worked beside her mother, cooking together in the mansion's kitchen like they used to before illness had interrupted their lives. The day of the party, Dorothy was in her element. Despite fatigue, despite the limitations of her condition, she moved through the kitchen with purpose and joy. She made her specialty dishes, recipes passed down from her own mother and grandmother. Each dish carried memories and love. As guests arrived that evening, the mansion felt more alive than ever. The dining room table, which had once seated only Henry in lonely isolation, now overflowed with food and people and laughter. Dorothy sat at the center, beaming, holding court like a beloved grandmother at a family gathering. Dr. Morrison raised his glass for a toast. "To Dorothy, who has shown us all what grace and determination look like. Who has embraced life with joy despite her challenges. Who has enriched our community with her presence." "To Dorothy," the guests chorused. Dorothy stood with Rebecca's help. "Thank you all for being here. For welcoming me and my daughter when we had nowhere else to go. For embracing us as family. For showing us that kindness still exists in the world. This past year has been the happiest of my life, and that's because of all of you." She sat back down, and Patricia, who was attending as a guest but keeping a professional eye on her patient, frowned slightly at Dorothy's pale complexion. The dinner continued with conversation and laughter. Stories were shared about the past year. Plans were made for the future. It felt like a celebration of community and connection. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Dorothy sat quietly in her chair, looking content but exhausted. Henry noticed her breathing was more labored than usual. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I'm tired but happy. This was exactly what I wanted. One perfect evening with everyone I love." Something in her tone made Henry's chest tighten. "Dorothy." She smiled at him, that same wise, knowing smile he'd come to love over the past year. "I'm glad I lived long enough to see this. To see Rebecca happy and settled. To see you two build this beautiful life together. Thank you for giving me that gift." "You're not saying goodbye," Henry said firmly. "You're just tired from hosting. Tomorrow you'll rest and feel better. Maybe. Or maybe I've done what I needed to do. Either way, I'm at peace." After the last guest left, they helped Dorothy to her room. She seemed frilier than usual, more tired. Patricia checked her vitals and frowned at what she found. "Her blood pressure is low. Heart rate is irregular. Dorothy, I think we should call Dr. Morrison. No doctors tonight. I'm just tired from the party. I'll rest now. Mama, please, Rebecca said, worry clear in her voice. Let Patricia call the doctor. Baby girl, come here. Dorothy held out her hand and Rebecca took it, kneeling beside the bed. I'm not afraid. This is my time, I'm ready. I've had a wonderful year, more time than I was supposed to have. I've seen you married to a good man. I've been part of a loving community. I've lived fully right up to the end. Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine. I'm going to be at peace one way or another. But I need you to promise me something. Anything, Mama. Promise me you'll keep living fully. That you'll build that restaurant dream. That you'll have children and fill this house with love and laughter. Promise me you won't stop moving forward. I promise. Dorothy looked at Henry. Promise me you'll take care of her. Not because she can't take care of herself, but because everyone needs someone who has their back. Promise me you'll be her partner in everything. I promise. Always. Good. Then I can rest easy. Dorothy closed her eyes, her breathing shallow but steady. Stay with me for a while? I don't want to be alone. Henry and Rebecca stayed by Dorothy's bedside while Patricia monitored her carefully. Mrs. Patterson brought blankets and made tea. They kept vigil through the night, holding Dorothy's hands, talking quietly, sharing memories. Around 3 in the morning, Dorothy's breathing changed. Patricia checked her vitals and met Henry's eyes. He understood without words. Mama, Rebecca whispered, tears streaming down her face. Mama, I love you so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for raising me, for teaching me, for loving me. Thank you for being the best mother anyone could ask for. Dorothy's eyes fluttered open briefly. She smiled at Rebecca, then at Henry. Love each other, she whispered. Always. Those were her last words. Her breathing slowed, then stopped. Patricia checked for a pulse and shook her head gently. She's gone. I'm so sorry. Rebecca collapsed against Henry, sobbing. He held her while his own tears fell. Dorothy had been with them for just over a year, but in that time she'd become family. Her wisdom, her humor, her strength had enriched all their lives. Mrs. Patterson cried quietly in the corner. Patricia wiped away tears while maintaining her professional composure enough to handle the necessary tasks. They called Dr. Morrison, who arrived within the hour to officially pronounce Dorothy's death. She was at peace, Dr. Morrison said gently. She was surrounded by people who loved her. That's all anyone can hope for. The next few days passed in a fog of grief and logistics. Funeral arrangements, obituaries, notifications to friends and community members. The church organized the service and it seemed like the entire town showed up to say goodbye to Dorothy. Father Michael gave a beautiful eulogy about a woman who had faced death with grace and had chosen to spend her final year giving back to the community that welcomed her. Person after person shared stories about Dorothy's kindness, her humor, her wisdom. At the reception after the funeral, people surrounded Rebecca with love and support. The community that Dorothy had embraced now embraced her daughter in return. In the weeks after Dorothy's death, Rebecca struggled with grief while trying to maintain forward momentum. She considered shutting down her catering business, but Henry gently encouraged her to keep going. Your mother wanted you to keep living fully, he reminded her. She wanted you to build your dreams. The best way to honor her memory is to do exactly that. So Rebecca kept cooking, kept building her business, kept moving forward. And slowly, the grief transformed from acute pain into a softer, more manageable sadness. 6 months after Dorothy's death, Henry found Rebecca in the kitchen, looking at photos of her mother on her phone. You're thinking about her, he observed. Always. But today especially. It's what would have been her 70th birthday. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking about how grateful I am that she got that extra year. How she went from dying in a shelter to living in a beautiful home, surrounded by love, part of a community. How she got to see me married and settled and happy. How she got to leave this world at peace. She was a remarkable woman. She was. And she'd be proud of what we're building. The life we're creating together. Henry pulled out an envelope he'd been carrying. I have something for you. I was planning to wait until our anniversary next month, but today feels right. Rebecca opened the envelope and pulled out legal documents. As she read, her eyes widened. This is the deed to a property downtown. And a business license application for Sullivan's Restaurant. It's your birthday gift to your mother. Your way of honoring her memory while building your dream. The location is perfect for a restaurant. The space needs work, but it has good bones. If you're ready, we can start making your restaurant dream a reality. Rebecca threw her arms around him, crying happy tears this time. Yes, yes, I'm ready. Mama would love this. Over the next year, they worked together to transform the empty space into Rebecca's dream restaurant. Sullivan's opened 2 years after Dorothy's death, serving the kind of honest, welcoming food that reflected everything Dorothy had taught her daughter about cooking with love. The restaurant became a community gathering place. Not fancy or pretentious, just good food and warm hospitality. On opening night, they left one chair empty at the best table, with a small placard that read, "In memory of Dorothy Sullivan, who taught us that food is love made visible." As Henry and Rebecca stood together watching their friends and neighbors enjoy the restaurant's first service, Henry thought about how far they'd come. From that desperate night on his doorstep to this moment of triumph and joy. Dorothy had been right about so many things. About taking chances on love. About creating perfect moments instead of waiting for them. About living fully right up to the end. Her legacy lived on in the restaurant that bore her name. In the community she'd helped build. In the love she'd encouraged between Henry and Rebecca. In the life lessons she'd shared so freely. That night, after the last customer left and the staff had cleaned up, Henry and Rebecca sat at Dorothy's memorial table. "She's here with us," Rebecca said, looking at the empty chair. "I can feel her presence, her approval, her love. She'll always be part of our story, part of our family, part of everything we build." They sat in comfortable silence, honoring the woman who had brought them together and taught them what really mattered in life. The restaurant would thrive. Their marriage would deepen. New chapters would unfold. But this moment, sitting at Dorothy's table in the restaurant that honored her memory, represented the culmination of everything they'd built together. A life filled with love, purpose, and the wisdom to create beautiful moments from unexpected opportunities. Dorothy would have been proud. The years after Sullivan's restaurant opened were transformative for Henry and Rebecca. The restaurant exceeded all expectations, becoming not just a successful business but a genuine community hub. People came not just for Rebecca's exceptional cooking but for the warmth and welcome that permeated every aspect of the experience. Henry transitioned much of his business operations to focus on supporting Rebecca's venture and his own evolving interests. He established a charitable foundation in Dorothy's name, helping families facing medical crises similar to what Rebecca and Dorothy had experienced. The foundation provided financial assistance, connected people with resources, and offered hope to those who felt hopeless. Mrs. Patterson officially retired after 30 years of service, though she still came by regularly to visit and occasionally help out at the restaurant. Patricia had become a family friend, stopping by for dinner and staying in touch even though Dorothy was no longer her patient. 5 years after Dorothy's death, Rebecca made an announcement that changed everything. "I'm pregnant." Henry stared at her, processing the words. They'd been trying for 2 years without success. They'd started exploring adoption options, making peace with the possibility that biological children might not be part of their story. "You're sure?" Rebecca laughed through tears. "I've taken 4 tests. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow to confirm, but yes, I'm sure. We're going to have a baby." Henry pulled her close, joy overwhelming him. "A baby. We're going to be parents. Mama never got to meet her grandchild, but I feel like she knew somehow. Like she blessed this before she left." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Rebecca continued working at the restaurant through her first 2 trimesters, finally stepping back in the 3rd month to rest and prepare. Henry threw himself into preparing the nursery, transforming one of the mansion's many bedrooms into a perfect space for their child. They painted the walls a soft yellow, gender-neutral because they'd chosen not to find out the sex beforehand. Henry assembled furniture while Rebecca sorted tiny clothes and blankets. Mrs. Patterson knitted blankets and hats. Patricia stopped by with advice and reassurance. On a clear October morning, 7 months after learning about the pregnancy, Rebecca went into labor. Henry drove her to the hospital, both excited and terrified. 12 hours later, they welcomed their daughter into the world. "She's perfect," Rebecca whispered, holding the tiny bundle. "Absolutely perfect." The baby had Rebecca's eyes and Henry's nose. She had a full head of dark hair and healthy lungs that she demonstrated enthusiastically. "What should we name her?" Henry asked, touching his daughter's tiny hand. "Dorothy," Rebecca said without hesitation. "Dorothy Rebecca Caldwell. After the woman who made all of this possible." "Dorothy," Henry repeated, feeling the rightness of it. "I love it." 2 years later they had a son they named George after George Patterson. The mansion that had once echoed with emptiness now rang with children's laughter. Dorothy and George ran through the halls, played in the garden where their parents had fallen in love, and filled every room with joy. Rebecca scaled back her involvement in the restaurant to focus on the children, though she still cooked occasionally and maintained oversight of the business. Henry split his time between his work, the charitable foundation, and parenting duties he cherished. One evening, when Dorothy was 5 and George was 3, the family was having dinner together. The children were chattering about their day at preschool. Rebecca was describing a new dish she wanted to add to the restaurant menu. Henry was listening and contributing when he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I want to tell you all something," he said, and the table quieted. Young Dorothy looked at him with serious eyes, so much like her grandmother's. "What is it, Daddy?" "I want you to know how much I love this family. How grateful I am for every one of you. Your mother's grandmother, the first Dorothy, taught her that food is love made visible. I think family is love made real. You three are my love made real." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "That's beautiful. I mean it. 7 years ago, I was alone in this house with everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. Then your mother and Grandma Dorothy showed up at my door and everything changed. They taught me what really matters. Well, family, connection, purpose." He looked at his children. "You too are the continuation of that lesson. You're proof that the best things in life come from choosing to open your heart, even when it's scary." Little George, not fully understanding but sensing the emotion, climbed into Henry's lap. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, buddy. More than you can imagine." That night, after the children were asleep, Henry and Rebecca walked through the garden as they had so many times over the years. It was October and the air was crisp with the promise of winter. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" Rebecca asked. "If you'd turned us away that first night? If Mama hadn't survived those first few weeks? I think about it sometimes. How one choice, one moment, changed everything. But then I stop thinking about what might have been and focus on what is. This life we've built together. These children we're raising. This legacy we're creating." They walked to Dorothy's memorial bench, installed in the garden 2 years after her death. The placard read, "Dorothy Sullivan, beloved mother and grandmother, who taught us that love is the only thing that matters in the end." Rebecca sat on the bench and Henry sat beside her. "I miss her so much sometimes. Especially now that we have the kids. She would have loved them. She does love them. I truly believe that. Her love didn't end when she died. It lives on in you, in them, in everything we do." "You really believe that?" "I do." Dorothy's final gift wasn't just the year she lived with us. It was the wisdom she imparted. The lessons about love and family and living fully. Those gifts keep giving generation after generation. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, thinking about the woman who had brought them together and taught them what really mattered. The years continued to unfold. Young Dorothy grew into a bright, compassionate child who loved helping in the restaurant kitchen. George became an adventurous boy who filled the house with energy and laughter. Sullivan's restaurant thrived, with Rebecca's reputation drawing diners from throughout the region. The charitable foundation helped dozens of families each year, providing the same kind of support Henry had given to Rebecca and Dorothy. When young Dorothy was 8, she asked her parents about her grandmother. "Tell me about Grandma Dorothy," she said one evening. "I'm named after her, but I never got to meet her." Rebecca and Henry exchanged glances. Then Rebecca began to tell the story. About how Grandma Dorothy had been sick, about how they'd shown up at Henry's door with nowhere else to go, about how Henry had welcomed them with kindness and saved Grandma Dorothy's life. "She lived for one more year," Rebecca explained. "One beautiful year where she was part of a community, where she had friends and purpose, where she got to see me married to your father. She died peacefully, surrounded by love." "Was she nice?" "She was wonderful. Kind and wise and funny. She taught me everything I know about cooking. She taught me about love and loyalty. She taught me to be strong even when things are hard." Young Dorothy considered this. "I wish I could have met her." "She met you in a way," Rebecca said. "Before you were born, before I even knew I was pregnant, I used to talk to her spirit. I'd tell her about my hopes for the future, about wanting children. I believe she heard me and blessed us." "You're a lot like her," Henry added. "You have her compassion, her strength, her way of seeing the good in people. She would have been so proud of you." Young Dorothy smiled. "I'll try to be the kind of person who would make her proud." "You already are, sweetheart." As the children grew, Rebecca and Henry made sure they understood their family's story. Not sanitized or simplified, but the real story of hardship and hope, of strangers becoming family, of kindness changing lives. They took the children to visit Grandma Dorothy's grave regularly. They told stories about her at family dinners. They honored her memory not just in sadness but in celebration of the life she'd lived and the love she'd shared. 10 years after Dorothy's death, the charitable foundation Henry had established in her name had helped over 200 families. Each holiday season, they hosted a fundraiser at Sullivan's restaurant, with all proceeds going to the foundation. At one such event, a young woman approached Henry with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Caldwell, I need to thank you. 2 years ago my father had a heart attack. We couldn't afford the medical bills. We were about to lose our house. Your foundation helped us. You saved us the way you must have saved your own family once." "I'm glad we could help," Henry said. "Do you know why the foundation exists?" The woman shook her head. "It exists because a woman named Dorothy Sullivan taught me that the purpose of wealth is to help people. She lived that lesson every day even when she had nothing. Her legacy is this foundation and every family it helps. Then I'm grateful to Dorothy Sullivan too. Because of her, because of you, my father is alive and healthy. We still have our home. We have hope." Later that night, after the fundraiser ended and the children were asleep, Henry and Rebecca stood in Dorothy's garden, reflecting on the evening. "She'd be proud of what we've built," Rebecca said. "The restaurant, the foundation, the family. All of it. We built it together, following the path she helped us see. Her final gift wasn't just her love or her wisdom. It was showing us what really matters and trusting us to carry that forward. Do you think the kids understand how special our story is?" "I think they're starting to. Young Dorothy especially. She's old enough now to understand what it means that we were strangers who became family. That love and kindness can overcome any obstacle." Rebecca leaned against him. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is our life. That we went from that desperate night on your doorstep to this. A thriving business, a charitable foundation, 2 beautiful children, a home filled with love. Believe it. You earned it. We earned it. By choosing each other every day. By choosing kindness and love. By living the lessons Dorothy taught us." They walked back to the house hand in hand, comfortable in the life they'd built together. Inside, they checked on the sleeping children, both peaceful and safe in the home that had been built on a foundation of hope and love. As Henry prepared for bed, he thought about Dorothy's final words: "Love each other. Always." They had kept that promise. They loved each other through challenges and triumphs, through grief and joy, through all the ordinary and extraordinary moments that made up a life. And in loving each other, they'd created something beautiful. A family that honored Dorothy's memory by living fully, loving deeply, and giving generously. Her final gift had been teaching them how to live. And they had learned the lesson well. 20 years after that February night when Rebecca and Dorothy first arrived at the Caldwell mansion, the ripple effects of one act of kindness continued to expand in ways Henry never could have imagined. Young Dorothy, now 18 and about to graduate high school, had decided to study hospitality and culinary arts in college. She planned to eventually take over Sullivan's restaurant, continuing the legacy her mother and grandmother had built. George, now 16, had developed a passion for social work and planned to eventually join the charitable foundation his father had created. He'd spent the past 2 summers volunteering with the foundation, meeting families in crisis and understanding firsthand the difference that help at the right moment could make. Sullivan's restaurant had expanded to include 2 additional locations, all maintaining the warmth and quality that had made the original successful. Rebecca still oversaw operations but had trained excellent managers to handle day-to-day operations, allowing her more time with family. The Dorothy Sullivan Charitable Foundation had grown beyond medical assistance to include housing support, job training, and educational scholarships. Hundreds of families had been helped over the years, each one representing a life changed by the same kind of kindness Henry had shown Rebecca and Dorothy 2 decades earlier. On a Saturday morning in late January, Henry and Rebecca were preparing for a significant event, the 20th anniversary celebration of the foundation. The event would be held at the original Sullivan's restaurant, bringing together families who had been helped, donors who had supported the work, and community members who had embraced the mission. 20 years, Rebecca said, looking at herself in the mirror as she got ready. "Can you believe it's been 20 years since that night? I can barely remember what life was like before you and your mother arrived. It feels like you've always been part of my life. We have been for all the parts that matter." The celebration that evening was both joyous and emotional. The restaurant was filled with people whose lives had been touched by the foundation. Former recipients stood to share stories about how help at the right moment had changed their trajectories. A middle-aged man named Robert Martinez stood to speak. 15 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. We had 3 young children and no insurance. The medical bills were destroying us. The Dorothy Sullivan Foundation paid for treatments that saved her life. Today, my wife is cancer-free, our children are thriving, and we're paying forward the help we received by supporting other families. That's the legacy of kindness, it multiplies. A young woman named Sarah Chin spoke next. 10 years ago, I was a single mother about to lose custody of my children because I couldn't afford housing. The foundation helped me get into stable housing and connected me with job training. Today, I own my own business and my children are healthy and happy. I wouldn't be here without the foundation's support. Story after story reinforced the same message. One act of kindness, one moment of choosing to help rather than turn away, could change everything. Young Dorothy stood to speak, surprising her parents. I'm Dorothy Caldwell, named after my grandmother who I never got to meet but who has shaped my entire life. My grandmother taught my mother that food is love made visible. She taught my father that the purpose of wealth is to help people. She lived only 1 year in the home that became mine, but her legacy has lasted 2 decades and touched hundreds of lives. She looked directly at her parents. My parents' love story started with strangers helping strangers. With my father opening his door to my mother and grandmother when they had nowhere else to go. With choosing kindness when it would have been easier to turn away. That choice created not just our family but this entire community of support and love. I'm going to culinary school in the fall, and eventually I'll run the restaurant that bears my grandmother's name. But more importantly, I'm going to continue the legacy she started. The legacy of seeing people in need and choosing to help. Of understanding that we're all connected. Of knowing that love and kindness can overcome any obstacle. There wasn't a dry eye in the restaurant when she sat down. Henry and Rebecca both embraced their daughter, proud beyond words. Later in the evening, a woman approached them with a teenage girl by her side. The woman looked familiar but Henry couldn't quite place her. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Amanda Foster. You helped my family 8 years ago when my husband died suddenly and we were about to lose our home. Recognition dawned on Henry's face. Yes, I remember. How are you? We're doing wonderfully thanks to your help. But that's not why I'm here tonight. This is my daughter, Emma. Emma has been accepted to several colleges but we're struggling to afford the tuition. I was wondering if the foundation might have scholarship opportunities? Before Henry could respond, a voice spoke from behind them. I'll pay for it. They turned to see Robert Martinez, the man who had spoken earlier about his wife's cancer treatment. My business has done well, Robert continued. I've been looking for ways to pay forward the help we received. I'd be honored to sponsor Emma's education. Amanda started crying. You don't even know us. I don't have to. Someone helped me when I needed it without knowing me. Now I'm helping you. That's how this works. That's the legacy. Similar conversations were happening throughout the restaurant. People who had been helped were now helping others. The cycle of kindness was perpetuating itself, growing beyond anything Henry and Rebecca had imagined. As the evening wound down, Henry found himself standing in the garden behind the restaurant, looking at Dorothy's memorial bench. Rebecca joined him, and they stood together in comfortable silence. Your mother started something remarkable, Henry finally said. She lived only 1 year with us, but look at what that year created. It wasn't just that year. It was her entire life. The way she raised me, the lessons she taught, the love she gave. She planted seeds that are still growing 20 years later. Young Dorothy and George joined them in the garden. The 4 of them stood together, a family built on a foundation of kindness, looking at the memorial to the woman who had made it all possible. Mom, Dad, George said, I've been thinking about my future. About what I want to do with my life. What have you been thinking? Rebecca asked. I want to expand the foundation. Not just in this community but regionally, maybe even nationally. I want to find families in crisis and offer them the same hope you offered us. I want to make Grandma Dorothy's legacy even bigger. That's a wonderful goal, Henry said. When you're ready, we'll make it happen. I'm ready now. I don't want to wait. There are families out there right now who need help. Why should they wait for me to finish school? Henry and Rebecca exchanged glances. Their son had inherited Dorothy's determination and compassion. Then we'll start planning, Rebecca said. We'll figure out how to expand responsibly and sustainably. But George, remember that sustainable change takes time. We want to help as many people as possible, but we have to do it in a way that lasts. I understand. I just don't want to waste time when people are suffering. That urgency is good, Henry said. It means you understand what's at stake. But channel that urgency into careful planning. Do it right so the help continues long after we're all gone. They returned to the restaurant where the celebration continued. As Henry looked around at the faces of people whose lives had been changed by the foundation, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was what George Patterson had taught him all those years ago. This was what Dorothy had reinforced with her year of wisdom and grace. This was what Rebecca had shown him through her loyalty and love. Wealth without compassion was meaningless. Success without purpose was hollow. Life was about the connections we make and the help we offer to people who need it. The evening ended late, with promises to stay in touch and continue supporting each other. As the family drove home together, young Dorothy spoke from the back seat. "Do you think Grandma Dorothy knows about all of this? About the foundation and the restaurant and the families we've helped?" "I believe she does," Rebecca said. "I believe she's been watching over us, proud of everything we've built in her honor. I wish I could have met her." "You carry her name and her legacy. In many ways you did meet her. She lives on in the stories we tell, in the lessons we teach, in the kindness we show. You are part of her continuing story." At home, they found Mrs. Patterson waiting with warm cider and cookies. Now in her 80s, she no longer worked regularly, but she still maintained a presence in their lives, a connection to the earliest days of their family's formation. "How was the celebration?" she asked. "Perfect," Henry replied. "Absolutely perfect. The foundation is thriving, the restaurant is successful, and our children are committed to continuing the legacy. Dorothy would be so proud. All of you have honored her memory beautifully." After the children went to their rooms and Mrs. Patterson had been driven home by her son, Henry and Rebecca stood in the library where so many significant conversations had occurred over the years. "Do you remember that first night?" Rebecca asked. "When you told us your home had room for both of us?" "I remember every detail. How scared you looked. How frail your mother seemed. How certain I was that letting you in was the right choice, even though it made no logical sense. It made emotional sense. Art sense. That's the kind of sense that actually matters." Henry pulled Rebecca close. 20 years ago tonight, I was alone in this house, successful but isolated, wealthy but lonely. Then you and your mother knocked on my door and changed everything. You taught me what home really means, what family really is, what life should be about. We taught each other. You showed us that good people still exist. That kindness isn't just a fantasy. That generosity can transform lives. They stood together, comfortable in the home they'd built, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd created together. The photos on the walls told their story: Rebecca and Dorothy's arrival, their wedding in the garden, the birth of their children, countless moments of joy and connection. "I think we've done well," Henry said. "By Dorothy. By each other. By the community we serve. We have. And we're not done yet. There's so much more to do, so many more people to help, so many more lives to change. Then we'll keep doing it. Together. As a family. Honoring Dorothy's memory by living the way she taught us to live." The next morning was Sunday, and the family attended church as they did most weeks. Father Michael, now elderly but still leading the congregation, gave a sermon about legacy and the ripple effects of kindness. "When we choose to help someone in need," he said, looking directly at the Caldwell family, "we set in motion a chain of events that extends far beyond what we can imagine. One act of kindness becomes 2, becomes 10, becomes 100. That's the miracle of love. It multiplies." After the service, people approached the family to continue conversations from the night before. New requests for help were made. New connections were formed. The work continued as it always would. That afternoon, the family gathered at Dorothy's grave as they did on significant occasions. They brought fresh flowers and stood together, honoring the woman who had made everything possible. Rebecca placed the flowers on the grave. "Mama, it's been 20 years since you left us. 20 years of missing you, honoring you, living the lessons you taught. I hope we've made you proud." Young Dorothy stepped forward. "Grandma, I never met you, but I know you through the stories and through the legacy you left. I promise to carry your name with honor. To continue the work you started. To love generously and help anyone who needs it." George added his own promise. "Grandma Dorothy, I'm going to expand the foundation and help even more families. I'm going to make sure your legacy grows beyond anything we can imagine now. I'm going to make a difference the way you made a difference in our family." Henry spoke last. "Dorothy, thank you. Thank you for trusting me with your daughter. Thank you for teaching me what really matters. Thank you for the year of wisdom and grace you gave us. Your legacy continues, stronger than ever." As they walked back to the car, a young couple approached them tentatively. The woman held the hand of a small girl who couldn't have been more than 5. "Excuse me," the woman said nervously. "Are you the Caldwells? The family that runs the charitable foundation?" "We are," Henry confirmed. "How can we help you?" "My name is Lisa Warren. This is my husband David and our daughter Hope." I lost my job 2 months ago and David's hours were cut. We're about to be evicted from our apartment. We have nowhere to go. I saw the article in the paper about last night's celebration, and it mentioned that your foundation helps families in crisis. Is that true? Henry looked at Rebecca, then at their children, then at the small family standing before them. He saw himself and Rebecca 20 years earlier, desperate, afraid, hoping for mercy from strangers. Yes, we help families in crisis. That's exactly what we do. Henry knelt down to the little girl's level. I hope. That's a beautiful name. Thank you, the girl said shyly. Henry stood and addressed the parents. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to make sure you don't get evicted. We're going to help David find stable employment. We're going to connect you with resources to get back on your feet. And we're not going to turn our backs until you're stable and secure. That's our promise. Lisa started crying. We didn't know where else to turn. We were out of options. You came to the right place. We know what it feels like to be out of options. But you're not alone anymore. We're going to help you without hesitation, without judgment, with all the resources we have available. As they exchanged contact information and scheduled a meeting for Monday morning, Henry caught Rebecca's eye. She was smiling through tears, understanding the significance of this moment. 20 years ago, they had been the desperate family seeking help. Now they were the ones offering it. The cycle of kindness continued, expanding outward in ripples that would touch lives they'd never meet. Driving home, young Dorothy spoke from the back seat. That felt like Grandma Dorothy was speaking through you, Dad. The way you talked to that family, the immediate offer to help without hesitation. That was her legacy in action. It was all of our legacy, Henry replied. Your grandmother started it. Your mother and I continued it. And now you and George are taking it forward. That's how legacy works. It's not about one person or one moment. It's about choosing kindness consistently, generation after generation. That evening, the family gathered for Sunday dinner, a tradition they'd maintained throughout the years. As they sat around the table that had once seated only Henry in lonely isolation, now filled with his wife and children and love, Henry felt complete contentment. I have an announcement, Rebecca said as they finished eating. I've been thinking about scaling back my involvement in the restaurant operations. The managers are excellent and I trust them completely. I want to spend more time on the foundation work, especially helping other women who are in the situation I was in 20 years ago. Single mothers, caregivers, women carrying impossible burdens. I want to offer them support and hope. That's a wonderful idea, Henry said. The foundation would benefit tremendously from your perspective and experience. I also want to start a scholarship program specifically for caregivers who want to pursue education or career training but can't because of their responsibilities. We could provide childcare support, tuition assistance, whatever they need to build better futures. Young Dorothy's eyes lit up. I could help with that. During summer breaks from college, I could work with the foundation on developing those programs. And I could handle the logistics and administration, George added. We could make this a real family effort. Henry looked around the table at his family, all committed to continuing the legacy Dorothy had started, all determined to help people who needed it. Then let's do it. Let's expand the foundation to include caregiver support. Let's create scholarships and resources. Let's make sure that no one else has to face the choice Rebecca faced 20 years ago, between caring for a loved one and survival. As they cleared the dishes together, working as a team the way they always did, Henry reflected on the journey that had brought them here. One choice. One moment of choosing kindness over comfort. One decision to open his door to strangers who needed help. That single choice had created this family, this legacy, this continuing cycle of help and hope that now reached far beyond anything he could have imagined. Dorothy had lived only 1 year with them, but her impact would last forever. Through the foundation that bore her name. Through the restaurant that honored her teaching. Through the family she'd helped create. Through every person who was helped and then went on to help others. As Henry climbed the stairs to bed that night, he passed the photos lining the walls. Rebecca and Dorothy on that first day. The wedding in the garden. The children's births. Countless moments of joy and connection. And in every photo, visible or implied, was Dorothy's presence. Her wisdom. Her love. Her legacy. 20 years had passed since that February night. 20 years of building a life based on the simple principle that kindness matters. That helping people in need isn't a burden, it's a privilege. That wealth without compassion is meaningless. The journey would continue. The work would expand. New families would be helped. New lives would be changed. But it all started with one act of kindness. With Henry opening his door and saying the words that changed everything. My home has room for both of you. Those words had created ripples that continued to expand, touching lives and changing destinies, proving that the legacy of kindness never ends. It just keeps growing, generation after generation, life after life, heart after heart. And that was Dorothy's final gift. Not just the year she lived with them, but the understanding that one act of kindness can change the world. 20 years later, that lesson still guided them. And it always would.